Chapter 837. Since it was an underground city and a maze, it naturally gave people a feeling of complexity and darkness. In fact, the complexity depended on the situation, but it was not necessarily dark. The dungeon was divided into levels. The higher the level, the further it was from the ground, and the stronger the monsters that were born on that level. With a fixed level as the boundary, the topography and nature of the dungeon would be different. When Noah entered the dungeon and arrived at the first level, a maze that looked like a tunnel appeared in front of him. The walls were light blue, and there were no gaps around them. The walls were completely made of rocks, but there was an inexplicable light source that lit up every passage. The adventurers who came from the Tower of Babel walked leisurely into the passages and disappeared from Noah's sight. When entering the dungeon, no matter which level one wanted to reach, one had to walk step by step. Therefore, even the high-level adventurers had to go through the stairs from the first level to the second level, and then from the second level to the third level. They had to keep going down step by step. Therefore, the first level of the dungeon was the safest place. That was not only because the monsters there were the weakest and lowest level, but also because there were many adventurers who went down from the first level. Any monsters would be killed, and there would not be a situation where a large number of monsters would attack at the same time. This was not a good thing for Noah. If possible, I don't want to find a single monster to test my skills. Noah laughed and shook his head as he said these words that seemed to be said by a veteran gamer. He walked into a passage with few people. Although the topography of the dungeon was not fixed on every level, it would not change its shape suddenly. At least, in the book that Noah bought, there was a map of the first 10 levels of the dungeon. Following the map in his memory, Noah walked towards the entrance to the second level while observing his surroundings. All of a sudden, the wall that Noah was looking at suddenly made a crisp cracking sound, and it slowly cracked open. Noah stopped and looked at the cracked wall. There, a goblin monster was letting out inaudible howls. It was like a chick that had just hatched from an egg. It kept struggling and popping out of the ground. This was the underground city. The dungeon was alive. This was something that everyone knew. Of course, the so-called life didn't mean that the dungeon would attack people on its own or that the terrain of each floor would change from time to time. It meant something else. For example, the underground city would automatically repair itself. If there was a damaged structure, the damaged structure would be restored to its original state in a short while. The monster was born from this living labyrinth. Just like how chicks and birds were hatched, monsters would be born from the maze's walls, floor, ceiling, and even other places. Because of this, no matter how many monsters were defeated, the monsters in the dungeon would not be wiped out. The types of monsters that were born on each floor were fixed. Sometimes, some monsters would climb up from the lower floors or climb down from the upper floors. Basically, the types of monsters that appeared on each floor were fixed, and it was rare for similar situations to occur. Now, Noah was looking at the scene of monsters being born in the dungeon. Jeeth! The goblin let out an unpleasant cry like a duck that was being strangled. The goblin that crawled out of the wall was like a flea. It landed on all fours on the ground and pounced in Noah's direction. Facing the pouncing goblin, Noah raised his eyebrows and remained motionless. When the goblin was in front of him, he clenched his fist and swung it. The back of his fist landed heavily on the side of the goblin's face. Palm! With a muffled sound, the thin goblin was sent flying and crashed into the wall. Its head tilted, and the light in its eyes dimmed. Palm! Immediately after, the goblin's body rapidly lost its color. With a muffled explosion, it turned into a cloud of dust and disappeared without a trace. Then, a piece of blue crystal-like gravel and a sharp nail fell to the ground. This was the fate of the defeated monsters. The defeated monsters would not leave behind any corpses. They would only leave behind a crystal called a magic stone. It was the core that existed in the monster's body. It was said that the reason why these monsters could move and have life was because of the magic stone in their bodies. This magic stone contained incredible power and could be used to make various magic stone products. There were no electric lights in this world. However, using the power of the magic stone, people could make it into a lamp and make it have the same effect as an electric light. using human technology to process and use it flexibly in various aspects to create magic stone products. These magic stones were the reason why this seemingly backward era was not at all behind the modern era in terms of convenience. These magic stones were the reason why this era was not at all behind the modern era. For example, the ignition device that had the same function as a gas stove, the freezer that could store food like a refrigerator, and so on were all magic stone products made with magic stones. Therefore, magic stones were regarded as a precious resource. Eulalie exported these magic stone products to other countries, and the guild that managed Eulalie obtained huge benefits. Therefore, adventurers could exchange magic stones obtained in the dungeon for money in the guild. The guild would determine the purchase price according to the size of the magic stone. Of course, the magic stones dropped by the monsters on level 1 would not be large. It could be said that they were pitifully small. As for the fingernails, they were the so-called dropped items. In addition to dropping magic stones, the defeated monsters would sometimes leave behind a part of their original body. It was said that the part of the monster's body was abnormally developed. It had the power to exist independently after losing the magic stone. It could be used as a material to make weapons or armor. Basically, it was more valuable than magic stones. If the defeated monsters would definitely drop magic stones, but the size of the magic stones varied according to the strength of the monster, then dropped items could only be obtained if one was lucky. The first monster that I killed dropped an item? Is this the effect of the world's protection skill? Noah laughed bitterly. Why do I feel like I'm playing a game? By fighting monsters, Noah could gain experience points. Through Hastia's grace, Noah could draw out the possibilities in his body, allowing him to grow and level up. After defeating the monsters, Noah could obtain the dropped items from the monsters. Was this not a game? It was a pity that once he died he would not be able to revive. The monsters on level 1 are too weak, Noah thought to himself. If I want to train my ability points, it's more efficient to go further down. Noah didn't even pick up the magic stones and fingernail-shaped items. Instead, he headed straight for the passageway leading to the second floor. To Noah, the magic stones and the dropped items could only be exchanged for a pitiful amount of money. He would rather not pick them up. Just like that, Noah followed the map in his memory and walked to the stairs leading to level 2. He entered level 3 through the stairs leading to level 3 and continued to walk downwards. If others knew that a new adventurer on his first day in the dungeon had reached level 3, they would definitely be shocked to death. But Noah wasn't satisfied. He avoided the weak monsters and went to the last level of the dungeon map that was recorded in a book that was sold publicly. Level 10. It was no longer a dull tunnel. The walls were covered with moss, and the ground was covered with short grass. It was like a grassland, and there was a phosphorescent light like the sun. However, it was filled with a thick white fog. Standing at the entrance of this level, Noah gazed ahead. Paka. Many ferocious half-orcs, who were larger than humans and had pig heads and chubby bodies, broke out of the ground. Seeing this scene, Noah laughed. Very good. That's why it's worth training. Chapter 8:38. Underground City, 9th floor. On one of the paths leading to the 10th floor, a group of people were chatting as they walked forward. It was a small team of 5 people. Although there were only 5 of them, these 5 people were well-known figures in Eulalia and even the adventurers of the entire world. Among them, there were 3 that Noah knew who came to this world yesterday. A pair of Amazon sisters with wheat-colored skin wearing rather revealing clothes. She was a beautiful young girl with a head of shiny golden hair and a pitiful appearance. They were none other than Aze, Tiona, and Tiona of the Loki clan. In addition to Aze's group of 3, the other 2 people were a stark contrast. One was a rather petite homunculus. The other was a very tall elf. Without a doubt, all 5 of them were from Loki's clan. Moreover, they were the well-deserved leaders of Loki's clan. On the way to the 10th floor, Tiona looked bored. Hey Finn, how long will it take to reach the 18th floor? Safe floor. It was a very rare floor in the underground city that didn't produce monsters. No matter which floor they wanted to reach, they had to walk on the ground. The lower the floor, the more time they would need to spend to reach it. Therefore, when high-level adventurers entered the underground city, they generally needed to stay for at least a day. Sometimes, it wasn't strange to stay for 1 or 2 months. Under such circumstances, the safe floor was very useful. At least, high-level adventurers could not only have a good rest, but also have a place to store their items. They wouldn't have to carry them around all the time. Therefore, many high-level adventurers who aimed at the lower floors would use the safe floor as a stronghold. The 18th floor was the first safe floor in the underground city. How can it be so fast? We just entered the underground city for a while, right? The one that Tiona called Finn was the homunculus. Finn answered patiently after hearing Tiona's words. Even if it's us, we still need to walk for a long time to reach the 18th floor. I say, Tiona, you've been down there so many times. Don't you know this? Tiona said angrily. So, don't keep complaining to the leader. You're annoying. Tiona is annoying. Tiona wrinkled her nose and hugged Ace, who was walking silently beside her. Ace, chat with me. Chat. Ace showed a puzzled and vexed expression. Tiona, don't make things difficult for AIC. The tall and slender elven beauty spoke. You know that Ace isn't the kind of person who's good at chatting. You're just causing trouble for her. What's the matter, Riveria? Tiona complained. Ever since she met that interesting little brother, AIC has been in a daze whenever she's free. She doesn't even bother to talk to me. Hearing this, AIC lowered her head and spoke in a mosquito-like voice. I'm sorry, don't bother with this unreasonable fool, Ace. Tiona sighed. She'll only cause trouble for you. However, AIC has indeed been in a daze ever since she came back yesterday. She even forgot about the morning exercises that she had been doing. That's really strange, Finn said with some interest. In the past, if we ignored Ace, she would go into the underground city alone. Today, we invited her over. This is rare. Is this related to the person who forced Ace to leave without receiving any favor? Compared to going into the underground city without saying a word, I'm more willing to see you being troubled like an ordinary child, Riveria said. But you can't continue like this, Ace. Soon, we'll have to go into the underground city. When that time comes, we might lose many of our companions if you're in a daze. I know. Ace replied softly, but she still looked disappointed. I'm really starting to get curious. Finn smiled. What kind of man is he that can make AIC daydream all day long? After saying that, the entrance to the 10th floor appeared in front of them. As soon as they entered the 10th floor, which was completely different from the 9th floor, AIC and the rest suddenly heard a strange sound. It was filled with a thick fog and didn't feel like a gloomy underground passage. Roar! An extremely loud beast-like roar reverberated throughout the entire space. Rumble! Along with the resonant roar, the ground began to tremble slightly. Immediately after, the whistling, roaring, and vibrating sounds all mixed together, fluctuating like an echo in this space filled with dense fog. Tiona was energized as though she had finally encountered something interesting in her boredom. What's that sound? Don't shout. Idiot. Tiona glared at Tiona and turned to Finn. Leader, is there a battle ahead? It should be. Finn nodded. But as far as the battle is concerned, this movement is a bit too much. Should we go and take a look? Riveria seemed to be a little concerned. I feel that the ground is shaking very frequently as if it's like there's an army of giant monsters charging at us, right? Finn showed a smile that matched his appearance. Very well, I smell something unusual. My entire index finger is shaking. If we don't go and take a look, we won't have the face to call ourselves adventurers. After that, Finn took the lead and walked in the direction of the sound. As the sound got closer and closer, about 10 minutes later, the group of Rockies, led by Finn, stopped and looked ahead, falling into a state of astonishment. Amidst the chaotic roars, a group of huge, fat half-orcs, who were 2 to 3 meters tall, held clubs in their hands. There were at least a few hundred of them, and they charged toward the center with ferocious expressions. There, a figure was surrounded by hundreds of orcs, but he was so calm as though he was taking a stroll. Sometimes, he stepped to the left, sometimes to the right, sometimes to the back, sometimes to the front, 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 sometimes to the back, and sometimes to the back, bending down, and dodging the attacks of the sticks in extremely thrilling angles. It was such a leisurely stroll that the hundreds of gigantic orcs couldn't touch a single strand of hair. As a result, the orcs howled repeatedly, their howls filled with ferocity and violence. That scene was enough to make everyone's eyeballs pop out. It didn't look like a battle at all, it looked more like a performance. A performance. That person who was surrounded by orcs was showing amazing skills that ordinary people couldn't reach. From time to time, he would take the opportunity to punch the stomach of the attacking half-orc, sending the huge monster flying. Sometimes, he would twist his body to dodge, letting the whistling sticks graze his skin and pass by in thrilling fashion. Sometimes, he would move slightly, and his entire body was like a soft cloud, getting into a position where the orcs couldn't attack at all. Sometimes, he would charge left and right, shaking the clumsy orcs into dizziness with amazing speed. Some even knocked into each other and fell down powerlessly. If this wasn't a performance, then what was? "You're lying, right?" Tyogny cried out in alarm. Facing hundreds of orcs, even if they are only equivalent to LV-1 monsters, he can still play with them like this. Could it be that he is a LV-5 adventurer? Where would a LV-5 adventurer have the time to play with orcs here? Riveria frowned. Who is that person? AIC, on the other hand, stared at the figure. Suddenly, her eyes widened and ripples appeared in her eyes. It's him. Chapter 839. Roar. Amidst the continuous beast-like roars, the gigantic monsters clenched their clubs and madly charged towards the figure in the middle who was surrounded by the monsters. As time passed, the number of monsters surrounding the figure gradually approached 1,000. Looking at this scene, the group of first-level adventurers of the Loki clan, who could be ranked in the whole world, fell into a state of speechlessness. Besieged by thousands of monsters. That was a scene that was difficult to appear even in the depths of dozens of floors in the dungeon. On the 10th floor, although it was not impossible for monsters to surround and attack, the number of monsters would at most be around 10 to 20. Besieged by thousands of monsters? That was no longer a difficulty that could appear in the 10th floor of the dungeon. The dungeon's floors were divided according to the difficulty, which was also divided into upper, middle, lower, and deep levels. The upper floors were 1 to 12. The middle floors were 13 to 24. The lower floors were 25 to 36. The deep levels were the floors below the 37th floor. At present, the development area of the dungeon was up to the 58th floor. In other words, the area below the 58th floor had not been reached by any adventurers or even any clan. In summary, the difficulty of the dungeon, which was divided into upper, middle, lower, and deep levels, would have a big leap at every stage. If the upper level was the difficulty of LV-1 adventurers who could explore alone, then in the middle level, if they still wanted to explore alone, they had to at least reach LV-2 to have a little guarantee. That's right. It was just a little guarantee. Therefore, even if they reached LV-2, adventurers would choose to team up instead of exploring alone. The difference was that big. Then, what was the difficulty of being besieged by thousands of orcs? Conservatively speaking, I'm afraid that such a difficulty might not appear in the middle level. Only the lower level can be matched, right? Riveria's face was solemn. Although in terms of strength, the half-orc is only classified as a LV-1 monster, its strength is extremely great. Even LV-2 monster can't completely withstand a blow. Its weakness is that its movements are slow and clumsy. Otherwise, it would be a genuine LV-2 monster. And being besieged by thousands of such monsters and still being able to deal with it, it's really amazing. Tyogny's face was full of doubts. But why are there so many monsters in the upper level? Facing Tyogny's question, Finn, who had been observing the figure besieged by the monster army, spoke. That should be the effect of some kind of item, right? Item? Tiny, Tigny, and Riveria were slightly startled. Look carefully around that person. Finn pointed his mouth to the figure in the monster army. Because it's overlapping with the surrounding fog, it's a bit difficult to find. Hearing Finn's words, everyone, including AIC, gazed at the figure who was surrounded by the monster army seriously. After a while, they indeed saw it. Around the figure, there was a strange gas that looked like smoke, but also like ashes, slowly rising. Tyagni's nose twitched slightly. There's a very nice smell. So that's how it is, using that strange smell to attract all the monsters? Riveria frowned. But, even so, there shouldn't be thousands of monsters, right? I didn't quite understand it at first, but now I finally understand. Finn suddenly smiled, but his eyes flashed with light. That person didn't kill the besieging monsters at all, he just blindly attracted them. Hearing that, the group of girls opened their eyes wide. After being reminded by Finn, even if they didn't realize it, it was impossible. The monsters that were sent flying by the figure's occasional punches didn't die. Instead, after crashing to the ground, they became even more enraged and joined the army of monsters that were continuously attracted from the surroundings. They continued to charge towards the figure. Instead of killing the monsters, he kept attracting them. So, it was only a matter of time before the number of monsters reached thousands. But Tyagni asked in surprise. Why didn't that person kill the monsters? That's because his goal isn't to obtain magic stones and dropped items, nor is it to kill monsters and gain experience points. Instead, it's to train his basic abilities. Finn stared at the figure that was drowned by the army of monsters. Under the siege of such an army, that person would occasionally launch attacks, sometimes letting the monster's attacks graze his skin, sometimes twisting his body and sneaking into the monster's blind spots, sometimes scampering back and forth at an astonishing speed, but he didn't kill the monsters. It's obvious that he is training his skills or basic ability, but since that person can move around with ease in such an army, it proves that his skills haven't reached the limit yet, so he can't be training his skills, he can only be training his basic ability. The group of girls instantly fell into silence. Strength, durability, dexterity, agility, and magic. The basic ability points were divided into these 5 categories. If one wanted to increase one's ability point, they would have to use that ability point frequently. If one wanted to increase one's strength, they would have to exert force. If one wanted to increase one's durability, they would have to endure attacks. If one wanted to increase one's dexterity, they would have to move their body. If one wanted to increase one's dexterity, they would have to run with all their might. If one wanted to increase one's magic, they would have to use magic. The figure that attacked and dodged in the army of thousands of monsters was undoubtedly using the monsters around him to train his basic ability point. The occasional punch was to increase one's strength. Letting the monster's attacks graze his skin was to increase one's durability without taking any damage. Twisting his body and sneaking into the monster's blind spots was to increase one's dexterity. Scampering back and forth at an astonishing speed was to increase one's dexterity. Other than the magic ability point that required magic, the rest of the basic abilities were being trained to an astonishing degree. After all, it was being carried out in an army of thousands of monsters. One could only imagine how terrifying the frequency of usage was. More importantly, under such circumstances, that person still seemed to be at ease, there was not even a trace of damage. With this kind of ability, how could one not be stunned by it? AIC's eyes sparkled even more after hearing Finn's explanation. And Noah, who was surrounded by the army of monsters, had already noticed that someone was watching from the side. In order to not attract attention, I purposely chose such a remote place to release the scent of return to attract the monsters. In the end, I still can't avoid it? Noah, who was running back and forth leisurely in the army of monsters, had a helpless look on his face. Well, it's no wonder that I attracted thousands of monsters. At this point, it's impossible to cover up my movements. While muttering to himself, the corners of Noah's mouth slowly curled up. Then let's deal with this wave first. After saying that, Noah suddenly stopped his footsteps and straightened his back. In the next moment, dazzling magic circles hovered around Noah's body and spun out. They were like precise geometric patterns that were imprinted in the air, blooming with dazzling light. Immediately, huge light beams that seemed to connect heaven and earth burst out from the dazzling magic circles, instantly drowning the army of monsters that surrounded them. Dong! A deafening sound and a burst of scorching flames suddenly gushed out from the center of the army of monsters, accompanied by a shocking impact, surging in all directions, causing the ground to tremble. Was! The sudden violent energy caused AIC and the rest to be shocked. Immediately after, they were met with the impact of the wind wave, causing everyone present to subconsciously raise their arms to block in front of their bodies. They stabilized their bodies and barely avoided the fate of being blown away. As for the monsters that were drowned by the magic light beams, they were annihilated one by the blinding light, leaving behind a ground full of magic stones and dropped items. One hit, all annihilated. Chapter 840. Whoosh! The howling wind turned into a substantial shockwave that spread out in all directions along with the blazing flames. Under the substantial shockwave, the dense fog that pervaded the entire 10th basement floor was blown away, revealing an unprecedented clear scenery on this floor that was shrouded in fog all day long. After an unknown amount of time, the howling wind finally calmed down, and the fog slowly became dense again. Standing in the distance, the adventurers of the Loki clan who were lucky enough not to be blown away spread out their arms and looked forward with trepidation. In front of them, the massive army of monsters had completely disappeared, leaving behind only a ground full of magic stones and dropped items. In the center of the ground full of magic stones and dropped items, the beautiful magic circles around Noah dimmed one by one as if nothing had happened. Who would have thought that just a moment ago, that figure was facing the charge of an army of thousands of monsters? The smile on Finn's face became a little forced. Hey, Riveria, if it's you, it shouldn't be difficult to do the same thing, right? If I can successfully use magic, it's indeed not difficult. Riveria gazed forward and smiled bitterly after a while. But if I want to use magic of that level, I have to chant for a long time. Why? Tyogny asked with a bewildered expression. Why doesn't his magic require chanting? Magic that doesn't require chanting? AIC stared blankly at Noah, who was standing in the middle of the ground full of magic stones and dropped items. Then, Tioni exclaimed in surprise. Isn't he that interesting little brother? Finally, Tioni also discovered the true identity of the person who was practicing his basic abilities with ease in the midst of the army of monsters. Tyogny was startled as well. It's really him? What do you mean, interesting little brother? Riveria was surprised. Isn't that the person you mentioned who joined Hastia's clan and forced AIC to retreat before receiving the favor? It's him. Tioni excitedly waved at Noah's direction. Little brother, we're here. Looking at the row of Loki's clan led by Finn, Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. Yesterday, Noah asked a little about Loki's clan from Hasti and finally understood what kind of people those girls who had been pestering him before were. Naturally, he also recognized Finn and Riveria. In Eulalie, adventurers were divided into two categories. One was the low-level adventurers. They were LV1 adventurers. More than half of Eulalie's adventurers were at this level. Therefore, LV1 adventurers and LV2 adventurers had a veritable high wall, and the treatment was also very different. If you want to reach LV2, you must have enough aptitude to achieve it. As a result, more than 50% of the adventurers were rejected by this high wall. The second category of adventurers was the high-level adventurers. That was LV2 and above, adventurers with backbone strength. High-level adventurers had the qualifications to be given a title by the gods. High-level adventurers were subdivided into third-level adventurers, second-level adventurers, and first-level adventurers. Third-level adventurers were LV2 adventurers. Second-level adventurers were LV3 and 4 adventurers. First-level adventurers were LV5 and above. The 5 people in front of him were the rare first-level adventurers in Eulalie. Finn Danner, the leader of Loki's clan, the leader of Loki's clan, the figure who commanded the entire Loki's clan. He was the most authoritative existence in Loki's clan except for the main god Loki. His level was as high as LV6, and his title was Brave. Riveria Lys Alvi, the deputy leader of Loki's clan, was the royal blood of the elves, and was also the strongest mage in Eulalie. Her level was as high as LV6, and her title was 9 Devil Concubine. Tiona Ziliuti, a first-level adventurer belonging to Loki's clan, Amazon race, LV5, and her title was Great Cut. Tiona Ziliuti, a first-level adventurer belonging to Loki's clan, Amazon race, LV5, and her title was Angry Snake. As for the last AIC, although Noah had expected that she was not simple, he still did not expect that this girl was better than he imagined. AIC Wallenstein, a first-level adventurer belonging to Loki's clan. She was also as high as LV5, but she was known as the most dazzling figure in the entire Loki's clan. Although her level was not as high as Finn and Riveria, who were the leader and deputy leader of Loki's clan, AIC was known as the strongest swordswoman in the maze city of Eulalie. Coupled with her beauty that was not inferior to the goddesses from heaven, she was the object that all the men in Eulalie yearned for. In addition, this girl had repeatedly achieved brilliant results in the strategy of the underground city. When the gods and adventurers of the same profession mentioned the topic of the underground city, they would always mention this girl's name. Moreover, this girl was only 8 years old. When she was still a little girl, it only took her a year to upgrade from LV1 to LV2. She set the record for the shortest time and the fastest speed among all the people who reached LV2 in the world. Because of her exquisite sword skills, she was called Swordswoman. Because of her frightening battle record, she was given the nickname Warrior Concubine. To put it bluntly, in terms of strength alone, the gods all believed that this girl was the strongest among the same level. This was a great honor. After all, in the entire Eulalie, the highest level was LV7, and there was only one person who had reached that level. And the number of existences that could reach LV6 could be counted with one hand. Under such circumstances, to be known as the strongest existence in LV5, one could imagine how powerful AIC's strength was. Therefore, when they learned that AIC was forced to retreat by ordinary people who did not receive the favor, Hestia and others were so surprised. Knowing that the girls who were entangled with him actually had such a big background, how could Noah not be speechless? Moreover, yesterday they were entangled several times, and today they met again. What an ill-fated relationship. Noah rolled his eyes. Why is it you guys again? Tiona and Tioni also seemed to feel that they were very fated with Noah. They looked at each other, and then they laughed out loud. Under the lead of Finn, the group of Loki's family, all came in front of Noah. You are the person who Loki did not hesitate to put a bounty on in order to dig into our family, right? Finn smiled at Noah. Although I have heard a lot about you from Tiona and Tioni, I only know how powerful you are after seeing you with my own eyes. No wonder AIC has been thinking about you. As soon as these words fell, AIC, who was silently following behind, turned her head and looked at Finn. Although she did not speak, and her face was still expressionless, it gave people a "don't say strange things" atmosphere, which made Tiona, Tioni, and Riveria a little unable to help but laugh. However, with your ability, you should be able to go further down, right? Finn asked doubtfully. Why are you staying on the 10th floor? My purpose is not to earn magic stones and items. I just want to train my basic ability and try it out. Adhering to the principle of not hitting a smiling face, Noah replied helplessly. Besides, I don't have the map of the floors below. In order not to get lost, I just stayed on the 10th floor to train myself. In that case, do you want to go to the 18th floor with us? Finn invited with some enthusiasm. I still want to have a good chat with you. Maybe next time. Noah smiled and refused. Today, I just want to practice. Then I won't force you. Finn reached out his hand to Noah without any disappointment. Let's have a good chat when we have the chance. Sure. Noah also reached out his hand and shook Finn's hand slightly. Then we will leave first. Finn turned around. Let's go. The wheat-skinned Amazon sisters waved at Noah. Goodbye, little brother. It seems that we are quite fated. Let's have a good chat next time. My apologies. Riveria slowly lowered her head as a form of salute before turning around. Only AIC was left. After staring at Noah for a while, she spoke softly. See you next time. Huh? Finn and the others looked at AIC in surprise, as if they were very surprised that AIC would say, see you next time, to an outsider. AIC actually blushed for a moment. She immediately turned around and left. Finn and the others looked at each other and smiled before following her. Looking at the slowly leaving Eulalie's famous group of adventurers, Noah shook his head. This is another level of entanglement, right? Chapter 841. The sun rose from the east and set in the west, and the day passed quickly. The birds slowly flew towards the direction of the forest. The sky gradually darkened. The clouds were dyed a gorgeous crimson, and dusk enveloped the bustling labyrinth city. It was a sign that the day was coming to an end. At this time, most of the adventurers in the dungeon had returned, and the entrance of the Tower of Babel was bustling with activity. Since there was only one entrance to the dungeon, the adventurers who returned from the dungeon would naturally join the other adventurers and leave together. Surprisingly, Noah was also among them. Perhaps it was because they had been fighting in the dungeon for a whole day that they could finally relax. In the central square of the Tower of Babel, the adventurers who came out of the dungeon were all clamoring and making noises. Noah, who was walking among them, was receiving the attention of the surrounding adventurers. Some of them even sneered at him. Is that the man who was wanted by Loki's family yesterday? I wonder what he did to be wanted by Loki's family. I thought he was someone great, but it seems like he's just a rookie. Really, he doesn't even have a piece of decent equipment. Indeed, compared to the adventurers who were more or less equipped, Noah was very shabby. That was because Noah did not have a single weapon on him. He was even wearing the ordinary clothes that were warm in winter and cool in summer. Entering the dungeon required risking one's life, and very few adventurers would enter without any equipment. Even the rookies who had just entered the dungeon would wear some cloth clothes with some defensive properties. They would either carry a sword or a saber on their back. Only Noah was alone, and he did not look like he was going to the dungeon for an adventure. Instead, he looked like he was going for a stroll. Naturally, he would be mocked by the adventurers. It was a pity that if the adventurers knew that Noah wasn't wearing anything because he didn't need to be serious about the dungeon and because he had a piece of dimensional storage equipment that could store any item, they wouldn't be able to laugh about it. After all, the adventurers had never even heard of spatial equipment or whatnot. Ignoring the adventurers who were acting like clowns, Noah walked out of the Tower of Babel and stopped. He turned his head and looked at the top of the Tower of Babel that he could not see the top of. In the morning, Noah had encountered the inexplicable burning gaze here. Who is it? Noah frowned slightly. I'll go back and try to ask Hestia. With this idea in mind, Noah lifted his feet again and walked towards one of the 8 streets that converged at the central square. West Street. Not far from the central square of the Tower of Babel, there was an ordinary 2-story house that was neither too small nor too tall. Noah, who came from the central square, separated himself from the crowd and came to the side of the house. There was a doorstep in front of the house. It was not the kind of house that was built directly on the ground. Instead, it was built on a stone platform that was as tall as a person. Therefore, the door of the house was on the stone platform, and it was taller than the people walking on the street. One had to walk up the stone stairs on the side to get to the door. Noah walked up the stone stairs with his back facing the street that was about 1 or 2 meters shorter than him. He came to the door and knocked. Hestia, I'm back. As soon as he knocked on the door, a series of hurried footsteps came from inside the house. Soon, the door was flung open. Hestia, who was still holding a book in her hand, welcomed Noah with the brightest expression. Her lovely face was full of joy. Welcome back, Noah. Although Hestia was not a dignified goddess in all aspects, it had to be said that she was very approachable. Being greeted by a cute goddess with a happy smile, anyone would be in a good mood, right? Anyway, Noah couldn't help but put on a smile. Yesterday, after leaving Hephaestus's place, Noah and Hestia found such a house and bought it with a large sum of money. The currency in this world was a kind of coin called varus. That kind of coin was made of gold. Of course, every varus was not a gold coin. How inconvenient would that be? Among the gold coins called varus, there were smaller denominations of 100 varus and larger denominations of 1,000 varus. The value was different. For example, the house that Noah and Hestia lived in cost a lot of gold coins. Therefore, buying this house could be said to be a huge investment. At the very least, Noah bought it after smashing a gold brick that was bigger than a brick. Although it was just an ordinary house and was not very luxurious, it was enough for only Noah and Hestia to live in it. Today is your first time in the dungeon. Why did you stay for a whole day? While pulling Noah into the house, Hestia closed the door behind her and kept yelling at Noah. I'll be very worried if I stay here alone. Didn't I tell you that I'm just going to try my hand and understand the situation in the dungeon? At most, I'm going to train my basic abilities. I won't do anything else. Noah took off his knee-length coat and threw it on the sofa before sitting down. Besides, you said that with my abilities, if I can go back and forth in a day, I won't be able to go deep into the dungeon even if I want to. So, aren't you worried at all? In the end, I'm still worried, Hestia said as she puffed up her cheeks. This isn't the past. In the past, I only needed to hide in my room and read books. Now, even if I can hide at home and read books, my heart will still beat faster when I know that my child is in a dangerous place. That's not right. It's normal for my heart to beat faster. Or is it that the hearts of the gods in this world don't beat when there's nothing going on? Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but look at Hestia's chest, but he only saw a pair of abnormally full peaks. The corners of his eyes twitched, and he hurriedly shifted his gaze away. Anyway, I just honed my basic abilities on the 10th floor today. Other than that, I didn't do anything else. The 10th floor? Hestia looked a little hesitant. With your abilities, level 10 is very safe. But as an adventurer, I went straight to level 10 on my first day in the dungeon. If it weren't for you, I would have been scared silly. Is it okay? Level 10 is still the upper level, isn't it? Many LV1 adventurers have formed teams to go there, Noah said. Oh right, I also met those little girls from Loki's clan. I also saw Hero and Geo-emoji. Loki's clan again? Hasn't Loki given up on poaching you? Hestia raised her eyebrows and placed her hands on the table in front of the sofa. Her face was less than 5 centimeters away from Noah as she stared at Noah fiercely. You weren't deceived, right? Am I right? You overreacted. Noah smiled wryly and pushed Hestia's face away. I just said hello. Really? Hestia stared at Noah through the gap between Noah's hands that were on her face. You can't lie to me. I said, if I really wanted to join another clan tribe, I wouldn't have chosen to join yours in the first place, Noah said snappily. Your worries are unnecessary. Only then did Hestia smile like the sun had cleared up after the rain. She even called out in high spirits. Then let's upgrade our ability points. Hearing that, Noah nodded and looked forward to it. Although he had only tempered himself for a single day, Noah had fully utilized his strength to the fullest on that day. How much would this increase the proficiency of his basic abilities? Noah was more or less looking forward to this. At the very least, it would let Noah know how fast he could grow, right? Chapter 842. The house Noah and Hestia lived in was 2 stories high, but in fact, it was only 1 story. It was just that this story was relatively spacious. After entering through the door, they arrived at the hall. In the hall, there was a kitchen, a bathroom, and a washroom. Facing the hall, there were 3 doors. They were Noah's and Hestia's rooms, and the last one was empty. At this time, in Hestia's room, Noah was lying on the soft bed with his arms bared. His back, which was engraved with a furnace and complicated dark characters, was exposed. After letting Noah lie on her bed, Hestia jumped on Noah's back and sat directly on top of Noah's body. Feeling the almost negligible weight and the wonderful touch, Noah rolled his eyes. Isn't this Lolita goddess giving out too many benefits? On the other hand, she didn't have any self-awareness at all. Instead, she took out a needle from somewhere. Noah, who saw this scene, frowned slightly. Hey, Hestia, do I need to use divine blood as a medium every time I update my ability value? After the gods engraved the grace on the children of the lower realm, they could extract experience points from the children who had received their grace and turn them into nourishment to draw out the possibilities within their bodies. However, this process needed to be carried out continuously. For example, although Noah had honed his basic abilities for a whole day in the dungeon, his ability value had not changed, and he himself had not been strengthened. Only when Hestia extracted the experience points from Noah's body and drew out the possibilities in his body would Noah's ability value change, and his power would also be strengthened. This process was called updating ability value. Noah had thought that he would no longer need to use divine blood as a medium to update his ability value. But looking at Hestia's expression, it seemed that this was not the case. Of course, Hestia nodded. Only with God's blood as a medium will the sacred text, engraved on your body, have an effect. Otherwise, it will just be some ordinary text. Only with God's blood as a medium can we extract experience from your body, turn it into your nourishment, and change your growth. If that's the case, wouldn't I have to keep pricking my finger? Noah's frown deepened. Don't you feel any pain? Hestia was slightly startled, but she immediately revealed a gentle smile. She leaned over and leaned her body against Noah's body, her head also leaning against Noah's back, and closed her eyes. Noah is really a gentle and good child, but you don't have to worry. After all, I'm a god who has lived for who knows how many years. The pain of pricking my finger is much easier than being bitten by a mosquito. When I was in the heavenly realm, I even heard that there were gods who deliberately dug out their own hearts because they were too bored. The pain was so great that they almost died as a pastime. Noah's cold sweat almost dripped down. What were these gods doing in the heavenly realm? However, Noah could understand Hestia's words. For these eternal gods, perhaps pain was just a kind of experience? Well, then I won't say anything more, Noah said awkwardly. So, hurry up and get up. How lacking was this god's self-awareness? Didn't she know that leaning her whole body on his back would lead to serious consequences? At the very least, Noah couldn't remain calm when he felt the full thing pressing against his back. I still want to rub against Noah's body. Although she said this, Hestia had already gotten up, and her puffed-up cheeks gradually disappeared. Then, I'm going to start. After that, Hestia slightly pricked her finger with a needle, and a drop of blood oozed out from her finger. And indeed, just as Hestia said, she didn't even frown. She didn't feel any pain at all and directly dripped the drop of blood from her hand onto the ground. But the familiar sound of water falling into the water sounded. Clang. A faint blue light like a wave of water bloomed from the engraving on Noah's back. The sacred characters seemed to be endowed with life and jumped in the faint blue light. Hestia treated them as if they were treasures. Her fingers slid over the jumping black characters, and the sacred characters began to change. It didn't take long for a new ability value to appear in front of Hestia. Noah Dole LV. 1 power, I0, D528, durability, I0, D566, dexterity, I0, D545, agility, I0, D573, magic power, I0, F350, magic skill, protection from the world, permanent skill. Equal to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. When Noah's new ability value appeared in front of Hestia in the most direct way, Hestia's pair of pupils trembled fiercely. Staring at the new ability value, Hestia repeatedly confirmed that there was no mistake. She couldn't help whispering, "Are you kidding me?" Hearing Hestia's voice, Noah, who was lying under Hestia, was puzzled. What's wrong? Only then did Hestia come back to her senses, but she couldn't say a word. Because Hestia really didn't know what to say. The proficiency increased by more than 2,500 points? This was something that had never happened before. Although Hestia hadn't engraved grace on other people, and she didn't know how much the proficiency of other people's basic abilities increased, she knew that this level of improvement was absolutely shocking. As for why, Hestia had heard more than once that the members of Hephaestus's clan complained that it was too difficult to increase their ability value. It was even difficult to increase the proficiency by more than 20 points at a time. And Hephaestus's ability value was only updated once every 1 or 2 weeks, or even once every 1 or 2 months. Noah's ability value had only been engraved yesterday and was updated today. There was a gap of 1 day in between. However, the proficiency increased by more than 2,500 points. This was not normal. It was really not normal. Although Hestia thought that Noah's ability value should increase faster in the early stage, that was because she thought that with Noah's strength, he could kill a lot of monsters and accumulate experience points. However, when the strength of the opponent was equal to or stronger than the person, it was the easiest way to gain experience points, and it was easier to increase the proficiency of various basic abilities. Therefore, for people who were already strong, no matter how many weak monsters they defeated, it was not very helpful to increase their ability value. Otherwise, more than half of the adventurers couldn't cross the high wall from LV1 to LV2. Although Noah was only LV1, his strength was definitely above that. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to force Ave, who was LV5, to retreat before receiving the grace. In such a case, even if a large number of monsters were killed, it would not accumulate to such an exaggerated extent. In this way, there was only one explanation. The possibility. Hestia's voice trembled slightly. The possibility hidden in his body, even if it is only a little, can reach such a terrible degree. The grace of God was originally used to draw out the possibility in the human body. Then, no matter how small the possibility of being drawn out was, if the possibility itself was extremely large, compared to others, the small possibility of being drawn out was still extremely large. Therefore, even if the possibility of Noah being drawn out was very small because of his strength, it was still many times larger than others. When she first met Noah, Hestia knew that she had found a treasure. Only now did Hestia realize how big this treasure was. She was so excited that she threw herself on Noah without hesitation. "Wow! I love you so much, Noah. Didn't I tell you not to hug me so easily?" Chapter 843. The total increase in proficiency is more than 2,500 points? Noah nodded as he read the ability value chart that Hestia had translated and copied down. Noah, who was new to the dungeon, did not know that other adventurers would not be able to increase their proficiency by more than 20 points in 1 or 2 weeks, or even 1 or 2 months. Noah did not feel anything about the increase in proficiency. Perhaps Hestia felt that the reason for such a terrifying growth was because of the possibility of Noah's body being in her body. In fact, part of the reason was that Noah had been training at an extremely high frequency all day. On this day, Noah honed his basic abilities in the midst of an astonishingly large army of terrifying monsters. Everyone knew that the more frequently a basic ability was used, the more proficiency it would increase. Therefore, after an entire day, Noah, who was in such an extreme state of training, naturally increased his proficiency in basic abilities at an extremely fast rate. In addition, whenever the monster army was about to pile up to the point where it could affect the actions of both sides, Noah would use the magic cannons to clear the area. As a result, he earned a lot of EXP, which he turned into nourishment for the improvement of his basic abilities. The combination of various factors allowed the proficiency of his basic abilities to increase at an astonishing rate. Of course, today was only a day of practice. To be honest, the monsters on the 10th level of the dungeon were too easy for Noah. If he could train in the middle, lower, or even deeper levels, his proficiency would only increase faster. There was no reason for it to slow down. At this rate, in 2 or 3 days, I should be able to reach S stage in all proficiency, right? Although it would be harder to increase the proficiency of his basic abilities at the later levels, Noah was only practicing on the 10th level. He would train in the deeper levels of the dungeon later, so his proficiency would not slow down. Therefore, Noah was confident that he could complete the upgrade to S stage in 2 to 3 days. Little did he know that Hestia was looking at Noah strangely when she heard that. Reaching S stage in all proficiency? Perhaps no one in the whole world had ever done that? After all, the further one progressed, the slower the rate of increase. By the time one reached S stage, it was basically impossible to increase one's proficiency. If one were to raise a single basic ability to S stage, there were quite a number of people who could do it. But to reach S stage in all proficiency? At least, Hestia had never heard of such a thing. The difficulty was probably not even comparable to leveling up. Noah, who didn't notice the strange expression on Hestia's face, stood up and slightly clenched his fist. Then he punched out. Hoo-eh! A strong gust of wind suddenly shook with Noah's punch. It rolled away at the end of Noah's fist, as if a small tornado had blown past, causing the curtains and sheets to flutter in the wind. Noah could not help but smile when he felt the strength of the punch. It's at least doubled. Not to mention magic power, Noah's strength, durability, dexterity, and agility all crossed several levels and reached D level. Although Noah's physical ability was not as good as A's who had reached LV5, he was definitely stronger than those who were LV1 and LV2. Only those who were ranked at the top of LV3 and even those who were LV4 could match him. Under such circumstances, it was no joke to increase one's proficiency by more than a fold. However, Noah's physical ability did not actually increase. God's grace was actually a bit similar to Noah's rune magic. The sacred text, engraved on the body with God's blood as a medium, was like the runes directly engraved on the human body. The effect of these words could be strengthened. The difference was that the rune magic relied on the effect of magic to strengthen, while the sacred text drew out the possibilities in the person's body and used these possibilities as strengthening materials to add to the person's body. In the final analysis, it belonged to the category of strengthening, but it did not really increase Noah's physical ability. Looking at this strength, if I reach LV5, then I don't need to use any magic, I can directly suppress Hercules' berserker with just my body, right? Maybe if I reach LV4, I can do it. In addition, the improvement of the basic ability of magic power also strengthened Noah's magic and magic. The improvement of this basic ability did not increase Noah's magic power, but it increased the effect and power of magic and magic. In this world, the consumption of magic was not magic power, but spiritual power. To be more precise, it should be said that the magic power in the world similar to the moon was transformed by vitality, and the magic power in this world was transformed by spiritual power. Moreover, this kind of magic power would not be produced in normal times. Only when magic was used would the spiritual power be transformed into magic power and used to use magic. Therefore, the item of magic power in the basic ability improved the effect and power of magic, not the amount of magic power. Although Noah had not yet developed the magic in the ability value, the magic and magic he possessed could also be strengthened through the improvement of magic power. Sure enough, it's not a bad thing to get grace. Noah was suddenly immersed in his own improvement. Seeing Noah like this, Hestia opened her mouth and wanted to ask something, but in the end, she dispelled the idea. In fact, Hestia was very puzzled. She wondered why Noah's proficiency of magic power could also be improved. It must be known that the way to improve the basic ability of magic power was to use magic. But Noah's 3 magic items were still empty, so he had not learned magic yet. Could it be that Noah himself had magic? However, if humans did not rely on grace, then they would not be able to use magic, right? In this world, being able to use magic without receiving any favor was a privilege that only a very small number of races like the elves had. Humans did not have this privilege. So, how did Noah improve his proficiency of magic power without receiving any magic? This was Hestia's question. However, she did not want to get to the bottom of it. For Hestia, Although Noah was someone she met yesterday, he was her first family in the mortal world. Therefore, Hestia was very concerned about Noah's feelings. From the conditions that Noah proposed when he chose to join her family yesterday, Hestia knew that Noah was a person who did not like to be restrained. So, before she was familiar enough with Noah to the extent that she was completely familiar with him, Hestia would not get to the bottom of it. After all, everyone had their own secrets. Even gods were the same. If you are curious about how strong you have become, you should go to the dungeon tomorrow and try again. Hestia suppressed her thoughts and jumped off the bed. In front of Noah, she put her hands on her waist and said, "Hey, Noah, are you hungry?" "By the way, we haven't had dinner yet," Noah said to Hestia as he put on his clothes. "Wait a moment, I'll go out and buy something to eat." "Okay, come back quickly." Noah walked out of the room as Hestia called out to him. When Noah came out of the house, the sky was getting dark, and there were fewer people on the street. Noah walked down the stone stairs at the side of the house. After looking around, he walked towards a stall selling snacks. At this moment, Noah suddenly stopped in his tracks. His somewhat lazy eyes gradually turned serious, but the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. Then, Noah changed direction and walked into an alley on the side of the street. The alley was very dark. There were also magic stone lamps made of magic stones on the street. However, no one would place a magic stone lantern in an alley. Noah seemed to have deliberately walked into such a dark area and came to the deepest part of the alley. Patter. After a few soft sounds, several figures suddenly appeared around Noah. Chapter 844. In the rather vast and dark alley, there was not the slightest sound in the surroundings, making the atmosphere a little heavy. It was believed that anyone would feel that the atmosphere in the air was very strange. In this space that was filled with a very strange atmosphere, Noah stood still and did not move at all. It was as if he was waiting for something. Then, in the surrounding darkness, several figures flew out silently. When they came to Noah's side, they landed on the ground with a thud, surrounding Noah in the middle. They were dressed in dark shirts that seemed to blend in with the darkness. They wore metal masks on their heads that covered half of their faces above the nose. There were about 20 of them. At the very least, there were indeed about 20 of the black-clothed people surrounding Noah. Outside the encirclement, in front of Noah, 5 people slowly walked out of the darkness. They were dressed the same as the black-clothed people surrounding Noah. However, their auras were clearly many times stronger. The one in the lead had a pair of cat ears, and he was holding a rather simple-looking spear that was definitely not cheap. He was clearly a feline orc. On both sides, there were 2 small figures that were only about half the height of the young feline orc. They were 4 hominins. Due to their short stature and the fact that they were dressed in black and had their faces covered, even Noah couldn't tell if they were male or female. However, in the hands of the 4 hominins, they were respectively holding a sword, a mallet, a spear, and an axe, which were emitting dangerous arcs of light. Needless to say, the young feline orc and the 4 hominins were the leaders of these people. Therefore, while the black-clothed people surrounding Noah did not show any emotions as if they were carrying out a mission, only the young feline orc and the 4 hominins looked at Noah fearlessly as if they were evaluating him, but they did not say a word. In response, Noah's expression was even more calm. In fact, there was a slight smile on Noah's face. "Good evening, everyone. Since you're all masked and dressed in black, it means that you don't want others to know your identity, so I won't ask who you are. You just need to answer some of my questions." Noah's overly calm expression surprised the young feline orc and the 4 hominins. However, the young feline orc and the 4 hominins did not say anything. However, the part of their mouths that was not covered curled up slightly in a condescending manner, and they maintained a disdainful attitude towards Noah's words. Oh! Seeing this, Noah was not angry. Instead, he was delighted. "Since you're so disdainful of me, it means that you know some information about me to a certain extent? For example, I'm just a LV1 newbie or something." The expressions of the young feline orc and the 4 hominins changed. This made Noah curl his lips into a smile. "Looks like I'm right. This also proves that you're not a robber or violent group. You're here for me, right? The expressions of the young feline orc and the 4 hominins gradually darkened, and they even became a little displeased. You came out without saying anything. Wouldn't that expose any information? Noah's expression became sarcastic. How naive. Which idiot taught you guys? As soon as this sentence was said, not only the young feline orc and the 4 hominins, but also the people in black around them exploded with anger. Bastard! The young feline orc finally could not help but spit out words that were full of murderous intent. Are you insulting our goddess? Your goddess? Noah could not help but laugh. So that's how it is. You guys are really from some clan tribe, huh? And the main god is a woman? Thank you so much for the information. At this moment, the young feline orc's expression became completely displeased. Even a fool would know that Noah's words were just a formality. Then let me guess. The expression on Noah's face disappeared little by little. You should be sent by one of the goddesses on the Tower of Babel to stop me, right? Noah had just arrived in this world. Although he had caused quite a commotion when he came to this world yesterday, it should not be to the extent of making enemies. Besides, Loki also said that she would be responsible for shutting up the goddesses who had been seen naked by Noah. Then, the other party should not be a goddess who wanted to cause trouble for Noah because he had seen her naked. Thinking about it this way, there was only one possibility. This morning, the inexplicable scorching gaze that was cast from the Tower of Babel. Based on the behavior of the attackers in front of him, Noah came to this conclusion. The young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs did not expect that they would expose such a level of information without even saying a word. Of course, their expressions were extremely displeased, and their behavior could be regarded as a tacit acknowledgement of Noah's words. Don't delay any longer, one of the dwarfs said in a deep voice. This guy is too shrewd. The more we delay, the more information will be exposed. Let's finish the task given to us by the goddess quickly. Although the young feline orc's expression was extremely displeased, he nodded without hesitation, raised his hand, and waved it down heavily. The group of black-clothed people surrounding Noah suddenly rushed toward Noah with a gust of chilly wind, engulfing Noah's figure. However, in the next moment, in the center of the group of black-clothed people, a burst of bright golden light burst out. Bang! A violent shockwave suddenly spread out, and all of the black-clothed people who had surrounded the bright golden light were sent flying. Accompanied by a burst of pai-li-pa-la and a series of muffled groans, those black-clothed men were like they were hit by a truck. They either smashed into the wall of the alley, or were dragged along the ground and fell to the ground in a sorry state. Noah, whose figure was engulfed by the black-clothed people a moment ago, reappeared in his full appearance. Around him, golden ripples reverberated in the space like water waves, covering the space behind Noah. What is that? The young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs were completely stunned. Until Noah's sigh echoed in the air. If you want to attack someone, you should at least prepare a decent attacker. What is this level of attack? The moment his words fell, the golden ripples that covered the space behind Noah suddenly lit up. Various weapons such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and so on, emerged from the golden ripples. Each weapon was surrounded by an ancient aura, but they were all extremely luxurious and gorgeous in shape, and their tips were pointed forward. A wild warning rose in the hearts of the young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs, causing them to scatter without hesitation. Whoosh! In the next moment, about 7 or 8 weapons shot out from the golden ripples, pierced through the space, and landed where the young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs were just a moment ago. Bang! The ground was directly blasted apart, setting off a violent wind wave, accompanied by a burst of flames, suddenly appearing. The young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs were affected by the wind wave and fire. Their figures that had just dodged were shaken to the side, and they lost their balance. In the most unsightly posture, they slammed hard on the ground and only stopped after rubbing for a distance. Oh, you think you can dodge a Grady relic? Noah sneered. Then, how about adding a few more this time? After saying that, Noah raised one of his hands, and a few more golden ripples appeared behind him. Together with the rest of the golden ripples, half of the gorgeous relic was ejected. Like arrows on a bow, they were aimed at the young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs. Then, there are 15 of them this time. You'd better avoid them. Looking at the space behind them being filled with golden ripples and the extremely dangerous weapons poking out of the golden ripples and aiming at them like arrows, the cat-human young man and the 4 humanoids understood what was going on. They had kicked an iron plate. Chapter 845. Whoosh! A loud and neat sound was heard. All kinds of weapons, such as knives, swords, spears, halberds, and so on, that were surrounded by a golden glow, were like bullets or lasers that were shot out of the gun. They were all aimed at the corner of the dark alley. Woo 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 woo. The young catman and the 4 dwarfs who were filled with a deadly sense of crisis let out a roar. They held their weapons and did not retreat. Instead, they moved forward and waved their weapons at the rain of relics in an attempt to deflect them. Clang, 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 clang. It was the sound of the weapons in the hands of the young catman and the 4 dwarfs colliding with the relics. Clang! It was the sound of the relics that were knocked away at the same time. Clang! After blocking part of the relics, they were finally unable to block the rest of the relics. They could only hurriedly put up their weapons to block the relics. The weapons in the hands of the 4 dwarfs sounded like they were wailing. Bang! They were the only ones who still had the strength to collide with the relics that were shot at them. However, they chose to dodge the relics and let the relics fall to the ground, causing the ground to explode. There was a sound of the impact. It was just a short moment of confrontation. The scene had actually become so chaotic. Noah said softly as he glanced at the young catman and the 4 dwarfs who were blocking the 15 E-grade relic attacks. Sure enough, you're different from the guy who fell there. Although it's only the lowest level of relic that was blocked, it's still a relic after all, and there are 15 of them. Conservatively speaking, your level should be above LV4, right? In Noah's opinion, only people who were at the level of AIC, Tiana, and Tyan could block all the relics that were shot at them. That was to say, the 4 dwarfs who were holding various weapons should be at level 5 as well. As for the young catman, I feel like you're more powerful than AIC. Noah stared at the young catman. You should be at level 6, right? The young cathuman said nothing with a gloomy expression. He simply raised his spear at Noah. Not only the young catman, but even the 4 small humans, who seemed to be in a slightly bad shape, raised their weapons and charged toward Noah without hesitation. Seeing the expressions of the young catman and the 4 little humans, Noah simply smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. Sounds of vibrations began to reverberate, causing the golden ripples to once again spit out luxurious and gorgeous treasures. On the surface of these treasures, the aura they carried was much more condensed and vigorous. Without a doubt, these relics were much more powerful than the relics that he had used before. Even though the number of treasures did not change, these treasures were on another level. Those were all D-grade treasures. The young catman and the 4 little people tightened their grip on their weapons. There was no other way. Only those who had experienced it themselves would know how much pressure it would be to face the extremely luxurious attack of the Gate of Babylon. At this moment, the young catman and the 4 little people seemed to be holding cold weapons and were ready to fight against a machine gun that would pull the trigger at any time. This scene was enough to make people wonder if he was deliberately courting death. Look at you guys. Even if you're killed, you won't say anything, right? Noah said indifferently. However, there are only a few clans with 1 level 6 and 4 level 5s in Eulalia. The range has been narrowed down a lot. Noah's upraised hand dropped. So, let me thank you for the information that you brought. The treasures that emerged from the golden ripples suddenly became sluggish. Bang 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 bang. Immediately after that, as gunshots rang out, the treasures turned into the most terrifying arrows and rained down on the young cat person and the 4 humans like raindrops. Boom! An astonishing explosion shook the dark alleyway, bringing with it a burst of scorching flames that rose into the sky. Many people on the street near the alley heard the explosion, causing many people on the street to look at each other and whisper to each other. There were even many adventurers who began to move in the direction of the explosion and the blazing fire rising from it. As for the rest of the ordinary residents, although they were noisy and restless, they were not surprised at all. After all, this was Eulalia, the most lively city in the world where many clans of the god gathered. If there were clans, naturally, there would be all kinds of disputes. Therefore, Eulalia never lacked disputes. What it lacked was peace. The golden ripples that filled the space behind him slowly shrank and disappeared. Noah stood at the spot where he hadn't moved a single step since the beginning. He looked around at the men in black who were lying on the ground before he raised his eyes and looked ahead. Ugh! The 4 dwarfs who were holding all kinds of weapons were lying on the ground with wounds all over their bodies. Their bodies trembled slightly as if they were trying to get up, but they were unable to do so. Puh! With a crisp sound, the young cat-human knelt on the ground with one knee. The long spear in his hand was also stabbed into the ground beside him, and the young cat-human used it to support his body. Although the young cat-human was not covered in wounds like the 4 dwarfs, the young cat-human's clothes were torn, and the skin under the cracks was bleeding. It could be said that he was dripping with blood. There was a trace of blood at the corner of the young cat-human's mouth. Through the 2 holes in the mask that covered half of his face above his nose, he stared at Noah and said in a deep voice, "You showed mercy." Hearing this, Noah curled his lips. If the premise is that all of you must die in the end, then it can indeed be considered as being merciful. Why? The young cat-human stared at Noah. Why didn't you kill us? Why? Noah looked at the young cat-human with a half-smile. Do you want to die? The young cat-human did not continue the topic. He only laughed coldly. Don't think that you can get any information from me. Hearing the young catman's words, Noah didn't even look at him. Instead, he turned around and left. Really, you can't learn your lesson. After saying this, Noah walked out of the alley without hesitation. He did not even look back. The cat-human youth looked at the black-clothed people lying on the ground, then looked at the 4 humanoids who were struggling to get up. He lowered his head and bit the corner of his mouth until it started to bleed. Really can't learn your lesson? The young cat-human understood this sentence. This was because Noah had said it before. If they hadn't said anything, nothing would have been exposed. Noah, you must have gotten enough information, right? Damn it! In the dark alley, only the young cat-human's regretful voice could be heard. Noah, who came out of another alley, saw that the street had become a little more lively. He turned his head and looked in a direction. There, the towering Tower of Babel was like an indomitable giant at night, giving people an indescribable sense of majesty. Recalling the scorching gaze he felt during the day, the attack of the young cat-human and the 4 dwarfs, and the information he got from them, Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. There is 1 LV, 6 and 4 LV, 5 members. Is the main god a family of a goddess? Noah was quite puzzled that he was targeted by a goddess for no reason. If it weren't for the fact that the young cat man and the 4 little humans didn't carry any murderous intent, Noah wouldn't have just been puzzled. Could it be that the gods are playing tricks because they are bored? Noah smacked his lips. No matter what, don't touch my bottom line. Otherwise, even if I don't want to cause any trouble, there is a limit to my patience. After saying this, Noah walked towards the stall on the street. He still had to feed the starving lowly goddess. Chapter 846. Kacha. With a slight sound of the door opening, a strong man with a height of more than 2 meters, full of bulging muscles, like an iron tower, with a strong expression on his face, like a rock, walked in from the outside and came to the most luxurious room in the whole of Eulalia. With a closer look, there was a pair of pig ears on the head of the strong man, telling others that he was an orc of the pig tribe. And this was the highest level of the Tower of Babel. Only the main god of the clan tribe, who ruled the whole of Eulalia, was qualified to use this place of residence. The Tower of Babel was the property of the guild. However, the guild had provided the upper level of the Tower of Babel for some gods to live in. Whether it was the environment, services, or attractions, Eulalia's Tower of Babel was without a doubt the most luxurious in the whole city. Therefore, only the main gods of the extremely rich and powerful clan tribe could live in the upper level of this tower. The clan tribe of the strong orc was ranked here. Furthermore, it was at the highest level. There were two most powerful clan tribes in the whole of Eulalie. One was the clan tribe of Loki. The main god of this clan tribe, which was Loki himself, was more inclined to live with the children of the clan tribe than in such a luxurious place, so he did not live in the Tower of Babel. But the other main god of the clan tribe of Eulalie lived here. Freya. The clan tribe of Freya and clan tribe of Loki, which were run by this goddess, were the two clan tribes at the top of Eulalie. At this time, in the room where the strong orc was, the stunning goddess was here. She had delicate and fair skin that reminded people of snow. She had a tall and slender body and limbs. She had a beautiful face that made people lose their minds at a glance. She had a perfect devil's body and a mature temperament that was like a shining light. She was the goddess of beauty and also the goddess of love. She was in charge of love and beauty. She had a beauty that no other goddess in the entire heaven could reach. Such an existence was standing by the glass window facing the scenery outside the Tower of Babel, sticking her stunning beauty to it. Her pretty face was extremely red, and she was twisting her body as if she was in heat. Her intoxicating eyes were full of passion and infatuation. If Noah was present, he would definitely be able to recognize that kind of burning gaze. That was the burning gaze that Noah felt from the top of the Tower of Babel during the day. Lady Freya. The strong orc didn't seem to be surprised at all that the goddess he worshipped the most was in a daze. He spoke with a firm tone. We failed. I know. Freya did not even turn her head back. Her gaze was fixed on a certain direction of Eulalia Street, as if she could see a certain figure that made her feel hot all over since this morning. Her tone was full of love. I saw everything. The Tower of Babel was located in the center of Eulalie. There was an extraordinary distance from the center of Eulalie, the highest floor of the Tower of Babel, which was at least 50 stories high, to a certain location on the street that Freya was gazing at now. But Freya's eyes still saw it clearly. She saw the figure that made this beautiful goddess so infatuated that she could even be called crazy. To be more precise, she saw the brilliance in the depths of the figure's body. It was the brilliance that made Freya lose herself and become obsessed with it like never before. To be able to make this beautiful goddess give up everything without hesitation, just to be able to take a look, it was something of such an intense degree. The goddess named Freya actually had a pair of very special eyes. This pair of eyes could see through the essence of people's souls. It was not the power of a god, but a congenital ability. Just like how human eyes could see things, Freya's eyes could also see people's souls. Therefore, this goddess could easily erase any obstacles and distance, and see the brilliance in the depths of people's souls. In front of this goddess, no matter how good or bad a person was, it was impossible to hide. Freya, on the other hand, was infatuated with those who possessed strong and dazzling souls. From the beginning, Freya had always used this pair of eyes to see through a person's essence one step earlier than other gods, and take the person she liked into her arms. Because she could directly see through the soul, Freya could easily distinguish a person's essence and talent, and poach people with superior souls and talents into her clan. No one could refuse Freya. After all, Freya's magical beauty was not something that anyone could ignore. It was not only because Freya's appearance was unparalleled, but also because as a goddess of beauty, she was born with the ability to charm any existence. Even a god would not be able to resist this charm. It was precisely because of this that the members of Freya's clan were all heroes in ancient times, and their strength was fundamentally different from others. This was why Freya's clan occupied a place at the top of this labyrinth city. Loki also knew that Freya's eyes had this power, and every time he secretly cursed it as the most damned cheating ability. And this time, Freya saw through Noah's essence more than anyone else. Therefore, Freya was infatuated, intoxicated, and even about to go crazy. It's really... Freya reached out and pressed on the glass window, as if she wanted to tightly hold on to the figure that haunted her dreams, and murmured as if intoxicated. It's so beautiful. Noah's soul was a domineering existence that even the daybreak star pattern could not activate, materialize, and turn into a weapon. Instead, an external weapon became a part of the soul. Noah's soul was something that even Gaia and Aleia claimed that no one could compare to. Even Bio and Draeger's consciousness that resided in Noah's soul was called contaminated. They even tried their best to persuade Noah to never let it be tainted by anything else, the purest existence. In addition, Noah still had the essence that would stand behind him no matter which world he was in, supporting him. As the darling of each world, he was the only one who could enter this space between worlds. Who else could have a soul purer and more dazzling than Noah's? It had been hundreds of millions of years since Freya was born. During this time, she had seen the dazzling souls of many heroes that were worshipped by everyone in the world. However, Freya could say without hesitation that even if all the souls she had seen in hundreds of millions of years were added together, they would not be as dazzling as Noah's soul. It was definitely the most dazzling and pure soul that Freya had ever seen. Freya was also confident that from now on, she would never see a soul that was more dazzling than this. No, a soul that was even a little bit more dazzling than this. Undoubtedly, he is only LV1, but even LV6, for LV, 5S, 7LV, 4S and 13LV, 3S could not do anything to him. What a dazzling and powerful man. When she thought of the moment when Noah showed his power through her eyes, and the dazzling brilliance that his soul emitted, Freya clamped her legs tightly, desperately enduring the heat from her lower abdomen. For Freya, who loved pure and dazzling souls, nothing could attract her more than Noah. I always thought that the life of a god was more precious than the life of a mortal, but for you, I can finally confidently shout that even if I lose my life, I only hope that you will look at me. Freya murmured to herself with a fanatical tone, as if she was talking to her true love. So, I love you, you must be the goddess of love and beauty, Freya. However, not all love was beautiful. As the goddess of love, Freya had both the beauty and ugliness of love, the positive and negative divinity of both. The unrestrained and cruel goddess of beauty. This was the essence of the goddess named Freya. You must be mine. You must, Freya shouted intoxicatedly, and looked at the soul that was countless times more dazzling than the sun in the dark night. A somewhat cruel smile hung on a face that would captivate any man. Chapter 847. Noah Dori LV. 1 Strength, A, 822, S, 968, Durability, A, 845, S, 980, Dexterity, A, 837, S, 972, Agility, A, 861, S, 993, Magic, C, 684, A, 888, Magic. Skills Frowny Face Protection from the World, Permanent Skills. Equal to Luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. Looking at the new ability value, Hestia was completely numb to it this time. She was completely numb to it. 3 days. In just 3 days, Noah's basic ability value had been upgraded from the initial state of I stage to almost S stage of the all-around ability value. To be honest, Hestia herself was surprised that she could still be so calm after seeing this result. This was entirely because Noah's upgrade was too incredible. In just 3 days, he had improved to the point where he was close to S stage in all ability points. Other people might not be able to upgrade one of their basic abilities to S stage in 3 years. Clearly knowing this, Hestia couldn't feel a trace of surprise at all, which proved how much of an impact Noah's ability value had on Hestia in the past 3 days after he had upgraded it several times. Here you go. After translating the sacred text of the ability value into the common language, Hestia handed the paper with the status of the ability value to Noah. Her tone was somewhat helpless. Just like what you said at the beginning, you've almost reached S stage in your all-around ability in 2 to 3 days. Congratulations. Hearing Hestia's monotonous voice, Noah took the paper and laughed. But you don't look very happy. How should I put it? Hestia sighed. It's not that I'm not happy, it's because I expected this result. Now I can't be happy even if I want to. In the past 3 days, Hestia helped Noah update his ability value almost every day. After all, Noah was the only member of Hestia's clan. Unlike other clan, there were so many people, but only one main god. If she wanted to update them one by one, she would be annoyed to death. Therefore, other clan generally updated their ability value batch by batch in 1 or 2 weeks or even 1 or 2 months. It was impossible for them to update their ability value as frequently as Noah. Because of this, watching Noah's ability value increase at an astonishing speed, Hestia had long been mentally prepared that Noah would reach the goal in a very short time. How could she be happy like this? Well, let's not talk about how long it's been. Noah, you're the only one who's reached S stage in all ability points, right? Hesti patted her cute cheeks and tried to cheer herself up. Apart from you, I don't think anyone else has almost reached S stage in all ability value. It's possible for a single basic ability to reach S stage, but it's unlikely for all ability values to reach S stage. Noah looked at the ability value translated by Hestia on the paper in his hand and nodded. Everyone had something they were good at. It wasn't difficult to specialize in this area and reach S stage. For a magister like Riveria, who only focused on improving magic, it wasn't strange for her to reach S stage in magic power. However, it was precisely because of this that magisters only excelled in magic power. As for the rest, such as strength, durability, dexterity, they were definitely not as good as magic power. In fact, they were even worse than ordinary adventurers. Therefore, it wasn't strange for a basic ability to be upgraded to S stage in Eulalie's world. However, it was almost unheard of for all ability values to reach S stage. Moreover, under normal circumstances, as long as one's basic ability value reaches the 6th stage, that is, D stage, they are qualified to level up, Hestia explained. That's why very few people can train their basic ability value to S stage before leveling up. For someone like you, who has almost reached S stage in all ability values, you should have leveled up a long time ago. Leveled up? Noah nodded thoughtfully. Hestia had said that the limit of every basic ability was 999 proficiency points. In that case, Noah had basically touched this limit. It was time for him to think about leveling up. Hey, Hestia, Noah asked. What should I do if I want to level up? Continue to accumulate experience points? Surely not, right? Hestia had said that under normal circumstances, when one's ability value had almost reached S stage, they should have leveled up a long time ago. However, Noah hadn't leveled up. This meant that he had to meet other conditions to level up. In response to Noah's question, Hestia only replied with one sentence. If you want to level up, you have to achieve great feats. Great feats? Noah was slightly startled. You have to achieve feats that only true heroes can achieve, miracles that even us gods have to praise, Hestia said very seriously. For example, you have to defeat opponents who are stronger than you and gain more experience points. This is the condition for leveling up. Defeat opponents who are stronger than you? Noah was completely speechless. Then, how is that possible? It wasn't because Noah didn't have the courage to challenge the strong and didn't have the confidence to defeat opponents who were stronger than him. It was because this result was a little unrealistic. Why was it unrealistic? Because in this world, could there really be a stronger opponent than Noah? Noah was the god slayer. Even the gods in the heavens had been killed by him. Perhaps the gods in this world could meet the requirements if they brought out their true strength, but the gods in the lower realm wouldn't use their strength. In that case, where could Noah find a stronger opponent than himself? Therefore, this fact was like a basin of cold water poured on Noah's heart. What else? Noah couldn't help but ask. Is there no other way to level up? No. Hestia shook her head. At least, so far, all the children in the lower realm can only level up after achieving a certain amount of feats. Noah's brows furrowed tightly. Now, this was troublesome. Noah didn't expect that he would encounter such a problem in this world. Could it be that in this world, he couldn't achieve the goal of leveling up? Noah finally began to worry. Well, you've just received my favor for 3 days. Although you've grown quickly, it's still too early to think about leveling up. You'd better focus on other things first. Hestia comforted him. For example, you can see if there's any chance for you to obtain magic. Magic? Hearing Hestia's words, Noah also remembered this matter. After all, you have 3 empty slots for magic. This talent is very rare. Hestia smiled. It would be a pity if you don't find a way to obtain magic. Hearing Hestia's words, Noah nodded and fell into deep thought. The next day, Noah didn't disturb Hestia, who was still sleeping. He went straight out of the house and walked in the direction of the central square of the Tower of Babel. Although his basic ability had basically reached its peak and there seemed to be some small problems with leveling up, Noah still wanted to try it himself before making a decision. Therefore, like the previous 3 days, Noah moved in the direction of the dungeon early in the morning. However, when Noah arrived at the central square, an unexpected scene appeared in front of him, which made him stop in his tracks. In front of the Tower of Babel, a group of adventurers occupied a small area and gathered neatly together. At the forefront of this group, there was a flag. It was a flag embroidered with a clown. That's the flag of Loki's clan? Chapter 848. Just like the guilds in the world of fairy tale, each clan in this world had its own coat of arms. Because Noah and Hestia's clan had just been established, and its reputation wasn't that great, the matter of the coat of arms wasn't urgent for the time being, so it hadn't been decided yet. However, for the other family clans, especially those powerful family clans, their coat of arms was proof of their family clans. The clown-like pattern was the coat of arms of Loki's clan. Obviously, the adventurers gathered under the flag embroidered with the coat of arms of Loki's clan were all members of Loki's clan. One of the 2 most powerful clans of Eulalia gathered here, causing the surrounding adventurers to discuss spiritedly, but they also unconsciously avoided that small open space. Under such circumstances, although the members of Loki's clan didn't line up in an orderly manner, they still carried out their solemn discipline meticulously. Not a single one of them dared to make a sound at this moment. Seeing this scene from afar, Noah scratched his cheek. Could it be that Loki's clan is preparing for an expedition? An expedition. That is, a long journey, a long march. Now, the underground city had been explored to the 58th floor. However, below the 58th floor, it was still a domain that no one had reached before. As one of the 2 most powerful clans of Eulalia, Loki's clan was at the forefront of attacking the underground city. And to reach such a deep domain like the 58th floor, even the time to go back and forth would take a long time. Since they gathered here with such fanfare, Loki's clan must be planning to go on an expedition to the underground city, get through the 58th floor, and reach the domain that no one had reached before, that is, the 59th floor. This trip would probably take at least 1 or 2 months, right? Thinking like this, Noah's eyes swept around the expeditionary army of Loki's clan, and immediately fixed on a small group in front of the flag. There, led by Finn, a group of Loki's clan level 1 adventurers gathered together. Tiona was there. Tiona was there. Riveria is here. Naturally, Ace was there as well. She wore light armor, wore light blue clothes, and had a long sword at her waist. Her blonde hair fluttered in the wind. In addition, there were 3 other people that Noah had never seen before in the group of level 1 adventurers. One was a dwarf who looked to be 50 or 60 years old. One of them was a young orc with a lightning-shaped tattoo on his face. He looked like a bad boy with wolf-like ears and a tail. The remaining one was a very pure elf girl with long hair that reached her waist even when tied up. Although Noah had never seen these 3 people before, he had heard about them from Hestia. The dwarf with the appearance of an old man was named Gareth Landlock. He was a member of the Loki clan's leader camp along with Finn and Riveria. His level was as high as LV 6 and his title was Chongjia. The young orc was named Bert Roga. He was a level 1 adventurer of the Loki clan along with Aze, Tiona, and Tiona. His level was as high as LV 5 and his title was Fierce Wolf. As for the pure elf girl, her name was Leafia Villides. It was said that she had excellent magic power and magic. She was famous as a perfect rearguard magus in the Loki clan. As the successor of Riveria, who was also a magus, she was in the process of cultivation. Therefore, Lefia's level was only LV3, but she was nurtured as the pillar of the next generation of Loki's clan. Even if she was not a level 1 adventurer, she was able to sneak into the group of level 1 adventurers. At this point, the leaders of the Loki clan, one of the two most powerful clans of Eulalia, were all gathered together. Even Noah didn't believe that such a camp would not go on an expedition to the depths of the dungeon. No matter what, let's run away first. Noah made this decision without hesitation. If I'm seen, I always have a premonition that there will be trouble. After saying this, Noah quickened his pace and walked towards the entrance of the Tower of Babel as if he didn't see anything. Unfortunately, Noah was still discovered. Perhaps Aze felt that the surrounding people were looking at her differently from those who coveted her appearance and reputation. When her companions were talking, Aze, who had been silent all this time, inadvertently glanced in the direction of Noah. Aze saw Noah quickening his pace towards the Tower of Babel. Aze was stunned for a moment, and then without hesitation, she rushed out. Aze? Finn and his companions were suddenly surprised. Hearing the noise, Noah thought to himself, "Oh no." He suddenly ran toward the entrance of the Tower of Babel. However, at this time, it was too late to speed up. In terms of physical ability, Aze, who was at LV5, was better. In addition, the location of Loki's family was not far from the entrance of the Tower of Babel. With Aze's dexterity, ability, she arrived there in almost 2 or 3 seconds. Therefore, Noah only felt a gust of wind from afar, and then the blonde girl, whose appearance was comparable to a goddess, appeared in front of him as if she had teleported. A pair of clear and transparent eyes stared at Noah as if to say, "I will never let you pass." Noah had no choice but to stop in a hurry. He looked at the expressionless but beautiful girl's pretty face, and the corners of his mouth twitched. "Why did you stop me?" Hearing Noah's voice, Aze tilted her head and asked very seriously, "Why did I run?" Noah said bluntly, "Because you are here, that's why I ran." Aze blinked her eyes and seemed to be a little confused, but because Noah answered, Aze did not hide her answer. "Because you ran, that's why I chased you." Noah was speechless. Who would believe this reason? If she chased after someone because they were running away, did that mean that she would chase after everyone who was running away? Little brother? It's you again? At this time, the senior group of Loki's family also noticed that Aze suddenly ran out to stop Noah. Led by Finn, Riveria and Tioni showed a look of understanding, and Tioni was even surprised. Only Gareth, Bert, and Rifia were puzzled. However, the high-level group belonging to Loki's clan still gathered in the direction of Noah while their subordinates looked at each other in dismay. Seeing this scene, Noah understood. "I can't escape. Hello, little brother." Tioni laughed happily. "We meet again. Seems like I've been seeing you a lot lately," Tioni teased. "Seems like we are fated to meet." As the leader, Finn glanced at Aze, who was blocking Noah, and shrugged. "We are all adventurers, it's not strange for us to meet here. But you are the only one who could make AIC chase after you." Finn's words made Noah and Aze both speechless, and at the same time, it also made one of the members of the group unhappy. "Speaking of which, who are you, kid?" Bert, who had a lightning tattoo on his face, stepped forward and looked at Noah with an obedient look. "Never heard of this guy, where are you from?" Being stared at by Bert like that, Noah frowned. Could it be that he had offended this guy? "Bert, you are being very rude," Riveria said with a serious face. "Besides, the other party isn't some small fry either." He forced AIC to retreat before he even received the favor. As soon as these words came out, Gareth and Rifia, who didn't know Noah, opened their eyes wide. Gareth looked at Noah with a curious gaze. "No wonder I felt he was familiar. Isn't he the guy Loki put on a wanted list?" Unlike Gareth, Bert's unruly face darkened, and his gaze towards Noah became fierce. "Is it you? The one who dares to say he didn't accept the favor and forced Aze to retreat?" Bert's unfriendly expression made Noah's frown grow deeper. As expected, trouble has appeared. Chapter 849. Raising his eyes slightly, Noah looked at Bert, who was glaring at him with a dangerous gaze and expression. It was obvious that Bert was different from the other members of Loki's clan and had an extremely obvious hostility toward him. Noah's heart was filled with confusion. Why is this guy so hostile to me? Is it related to the cat youth who attacked me not long ago and the 4 little people? While Noah was lost in thought, on the side, Tiona said in a displeased tone, "Hey Bert, why are you angry over there? Why are you asking something you already know the answer to?" Bert didn't even look at Tiona. He still stared at Noah and said mercilessly, "A guy who didn't receive the favor can force the LV-5As to retreat? Do you really think we LV-5s are made of mud?" "Oh," Finn said indifferently. "In other words, Bert, you don't believe this matter?" "Of course." Bert didn't care that the person involved was in front of him and sneered. "How can I believe this kind of thing that is obviously a lie?" Hearing Bert's words, Tiona and Tiona's expression became unfriendly. Even A's slightly raised her eyebrows and looked at Bert. "I didn't lie." There was no doubt that Noah was able to force A's to retreat without receiving the favor. It must be Loki, A's, Tiona, and Tiona who brought back the news of their clan. If Bert doubts this matter, doesn't that mean A's and the others are lying? After that, we also saw his ability value. Tiona also said, "Loki told us himself that at that time, his ability value was all in the initial state of I stage, and even his proficiency was 0. Do you want to doubt Loki's words? You also said that Loki told you. You don't understand the divine script, right?" Bert curled his lips. That Lord God sometimes does inexplicable things. Maybe he deliberately said this for some reason? Hearing this, A's reacted. "I also understand the divine script." That one sentence made Bert wilt. If AIC could also read this sacred text, then AIC, who had personally witnessed Noah's ability, would be able to prove the truth of this matter. Bert, who knew Alice well, knew that she wouldn't lie. It would be better to say that he didn't know how to lie. Once Ace lied, it would be too easy to tell. After all, this girl was not good at expressing her emotions, nor was she good at hiding them. Embarrassed, Bert could only glare angrily at Noah. "Anyway, I definitely don't believe that this guy can force AIC to retreat. If you want me to believe you, then let's have a match here." After saying that, Bert seemed to want to prove that he was serious. He pulled out the hand that had been in his pocket all this time and lifted one leg slightly. He stared at Noah, and the aura of a ferocious beast surged from his body. Noah didn't say a word. This was because Noah wanted to observe for a while why this werewolf named Bert was so hostile towards him. Moreover, Noah also wanted to know if this werewolf had anything to do with the young werewolf and the 4 werewolves that attacked him not long ago. Although he had never heard of a LV-6 werewolf in the Rocky clan, nor did he hear of 4 LV-5 werewolves in the Rocky clan, but even if he was not a Rocky clan, it did not mean that he had nothing to do with the Rocky clan. That was why Noah wanted to observe for a while and did not say anything. Now it seemed that this werewolf named Bert was just being arrogant and unruly. Reality proved that Noah's thinking was still too one-sided. "That's so ugly, Bert," Tiona mocked. "You think I don't know that you're just unhappy that AIC cares so much about the little brother?" The ferocious Bert's expression froze. Noah, who noticed this, raised an eyebrow. Could it be that this werewolf called Bert was looking for trouble with him because of his relationship with AIC? "Haven't you been in a bad mood for the past few days?" Tiona mocked. After the fight with the little brother, AIC has been in a daze these days. After you found out that AIC was in a daze because she was thinking about the little brother, you've been very unhappy. Now you're looking for trouble with the little brother. You're really embarrassing yourself. "Shut up, stupid Amazon." Bert's face turned green and white, and he finally couldn't help but become angry. "Don't tell me you believe this kind of nonsense. Can you force us LV-5 werewolves without receiving the favor? When did our LV-5 become so cheap?" Hearing Bert's words, Tiona was about to retort, but Finn on the side spoke with a blank expression. "Okay, that's enough." The commanding tone made Tiona and Bert shut their mouths. As the leader of Loki's tribe, Finn's words were undoubtedly very important. Even the unruly Bert wouldn't retort when Finn used a commanding tone. After spitting a mouthful of saliva, Bert turned around and didn't look at Noah. "Apologies." Finn smiled at Noah. "My people were too rude, please forgive them." "Forget it." Noah, who knew that Bert was jealous, laughed and shook his head. "It's not like I haven't been picked on before. I'm used to it." With that, Noah glanced at Bert. "But in the future, watch your mouth." "You." Bert turned his head and stared at Noah. His eyes were filled with ferocity. Before Bert could say anything, Finn spoke first. "Let's not talk about this. Are you preparing to enter the dungeon? Have you prepared a map this time?" Finn's words made Noah feel helpless. "What's wrong?" Finn asked curiously. "Did you encounter a difficult problem?" "It's considered a difficult problem?" Noah sighed. "The dungeon map that I have is only up to level 12. Speaking of this matter, Noah was indeed helpless. Although he had found a map of the dungeon up to level 10 in the bookstore outside, that was the limit. Because, in the dungeon, the most important thing was a map. That would prevent many problems. Therefore, maps from the dungeon would usually be sold at a high price in the guild. No one would sell them in the bookstore. The dungeon before level 10 wasn't that dangerous. The maps weren't as valuable as the lower levels. The value of maps from the 10th floor onwards was much higher. That was the problem. Because Noah was still LV1, the guild didn't sell the maps after level 10 to him for his safety. If he wanted to buy the maps of the dungeon's middle, lower, and even deeper levels, he had to be considered by the guild to be able to explore there. For example, he had to meet the strength requirement of the corresponding level or form a team. And Noah was only LV1 at the moment, and he was alone. Under such circumstances, the guild used safety as an excuse to refuse to sell the maps of the dungeon outside of the lower levels to Noah. They also advised Noah not to bite off more than he could chew and to at least reach LV2 or form a team. Only then would they sell the maps of the middle levels to him. Noah was speechless. This also caused Noah to wander around level 12 for the past few days. Otherwise, he would have been able to reach the S level earlier, right? "Is that so?" Finn's eyes flashed slightly, and then he invited. "Then do you want to move with us temporarily?" "Move together?" Noah was stunned. "Move together?" Even AIC and the others were stunned. "We are planning to enter level 59, and we will pass through level 18 on the way," Finn said. "There, some adventurers are also selling maps. You can move with us temporarily. Wait until we reach level 18 and buy the maps. Then it won't be too late to move." Hearing this, Noah narrowed his eyes and stared at Finn. Finn met Noah's gaze without a trace of guilt. After a while, Noah seemed to understand something and smiled. "In that case, I will have to trouble you." The smile on Finn's face deepened. "We are all adventurers. You don't have to be so polite." Noah shrugged noncommittally. In this way, the next itinerary was set. Chapter 850. Underground City, Level 17. This was a floor filled with cave-like passages. Some of the surrounding walls were slightly white, while some were flashing with the color of rocks. This allowed most of the areas on this floor to have sufficient light. It even looked like they had arrived at a snowy area. It wasn't very dark. In such a floor, in one of the passageways, a furious roar echoed. "Hiya!" With such a roar and astonishing speed, Wargen Bert charged forward like a war chariot. As he charged, his body danced. His feet, which were clad in boots made of unknown metal, turned into flashes of light and shadow, kicking the monsters in front of him like a windmill. The monster did not even have time to make a sound before it was crushed by the metallic boots that were slightly stained with blood. Unsurprisingly, it turned into a pile of ashes. Even the magic stone was crushed, leaving nothing behind. Level 17 was the middle section of the dungeon. On this floor, a conservative estimate was that it would take a LV2 team of about 3 people to come here. However, for a LV5 werewolf orc, these monsters that were dangerous to LV2 adventurers had almost no resistance. No matter how many of them there were, they were crushed in an instant without any suspense. Under such circumstances, a group of second-level adventurers, who were originally responsible for clearing monsters and centered around the LV-3 members, witnessed the violent fighting style of their first-level adventurers with their own eyes. They could only stand there dumbfounded and did not react for a long time. "What the hell is that guy doing?" Tyogny, who was walking behind them, complained. "This is only the middle level. Although we will rest for a while after reaching the 18th floor, what's the point of wasting energy here?" As a first-level adventurer in the clan, Bert, who had reached LV-5, didn't need to waste his stamina here. At LV-5, no matter how many mid-level monsters you kill, you won't get much experience points. The middle level was where LV-1 and LV-2 adventurers wandered. Since that was the case, letting the low-level members of the clan fight would give him more EXP. Bo T's way of doing things was really hard to understand. "Don't worry about him," Tona, who was walking beside Tioni, said mercilessly. She must be venting her anger because she couldn't find fault with little brother, right? Tiona turned to the back of the group as she spoke. There, Noah was casually following at the back of the group and chatting with Finn. As for Ace and Leafia, they followed beside him. There was a special characteristic of the underground city. The further down they went, the larger the floor area became. It was said that by the time one reached the 40th floor, the area would be comparable to Eulalie's entire domain. Of course, there were some exceptional floors that did not meet this criteria. However, in principle, the underground city could still be considered as a conical structure. The floors ahead were undoubtedly smaller. Because of this, when a large-scale team of tens of people attacked the dungeon, it would be difficult for them to advance from the first level to the middle level. A large group of people moving in a narrow passage would be too crowded, just like an army marching. Even moving forward was a difficult task. Therefore, when they went on an expedition in groups, according to the usual practice, the Loki clan would divide the team into 2 or 3 groups and regroup at the predetermined floor. Therefore, as the other 2 leaders of the Loki clan, Riveria and Gareth, went to another team and led that team to delay their departure. Finn, on the other hand, led the adventurers and some members led by Aze, Tiona, Tyogny, and Bert to the 18th floor. They camped in the safety floor and waited for the arrival of Riveria and Gareth. Noah followed behind this team. While chatting with Finn, Noah kept glancing at the people around him. He was sweating profusely. Over there, AIC stared at Noah as she walked forward. She didn't look away for a moment. No, that's not right. Instead of staring at Noah, Ace's eyes were staring at Noah's back. That gaze was as if she wanted to see through Noah's clothes and take in the scene on Noah's back. It was not sharp, but it was quite persistent. And what was on Noah's back? Of course, it was naturally the favor engraved by Hastia. This girl definitely wanted to see his ability value. Although this was just a guess, Noah firmly believed it. Next to Ace, the elven girl named Leafia was really staring at Noah. However, that shouldn't be called staring but staring, right? Maybe Noah had offended her in some way, but Leafia stared at Noah fiercely, as if Noah was a dangerous person. Her eyes were full of vigilance. Being stared at by these 2 girls, how could Noah not feel ashamed? It was one thing for Bert to treat him with hostility for no reason, but now that Aze and Rifia were staring at Noah like that, Noah was once again sure of himself. Loki's spawn was a problem for Noah. Finn, on the other hand, acted as though he didn't notice anything and continued to talk. Soon, we will reach the entrance to the 18th floor. There is a floor master guarding there. Although it is only the 17th floor master, in order to not affect the ordinary members, we have to get rid of it. Floor master? Noah's attention was successfully diverted. Floor master. It was an extremely powerful monster that only appeared on certain floors of the dungeon. Its official name was Maze King. They were like bosses among monsters. Not only would they be killed, but after a few weeks or months of respawn, their strength would be 2 levels higher than the monsters on that floor. On the 17th floor, there was such a monster. Generally, the level of the monsters on the 17th floor was LV2. The level of the floor master on the 17th floor was LV4. In the case where most of the members of Loki's spawn were LV3, leaving the LV4 floor master was undoubtedly likely to cause unnecessary casualties. Instead of leaving it alone, a shrewd person like Finn would definitely choose to simply kill it. Floor master? Noah's eyes began to flicker slightly, and he also had an idea in his mind. At this time, Finn spoke. "We're here." Hearing this, Noah raised his head and looked forward. He saw that at the end of the cave-like passage, there was a very vast, huge cavern like a hall. The cavern was flat and rectangular. From the entrance to the depths of the cavern, the distance was about 200 meters, the width was about 100 meters, and the height from the floor to the ceiling was about 20 meters. It was quite vast. In such a cavern, whether it was the walls, the ceiling, or the floor, they were all formed by rough rock. Only the structure of the wall on the left was different. It was a wall that seemed to have been specially polished and was extremely flat, like a huge piece of ice. Tisse. Looking at the wall, Bert, who was rushing at the front, stopped, clicked his tongue, turned his head, and shouted in Finn's direction. "The floor master's room is here. What do you think? Do you want to fight?" Bert's words made the entire Loki spawn turn their eyes to Finn. Even A's, who had been staring at Noah, and Rifaya, who had been staring at Noah, turned their eyes to Finn, waiting for Finn's decision. Just when Finn was about to give the order without hesitation, Noah suddenly spoke. "If you don't care about the experience points of this floor master, why don't you give it to me?" Finn, who was about to give the order, stopped his hand in midair. "Give it to you?" Ace, Rifaya, Tiona, and Tiona turned their eyes to Noah. Bert also heard Noah's words and couldn't help but laugh. "ALV1 challenging a LV4 floor master? Isn't that good? Just prove to us that you have the strength to force a LV5 to retreat." Noah ignored Bert and looked directly at Finn. "What do you think?" Finn suddenly smiled. "Well, I'll give it to you." Chapter 851. When Finn agreed to let Noah take on the first boss of the dungeon, all the members of Loki's clan silently retreated, giving Noah the view of the vast hall. With Finn as the leader, the group of level 1 adventurers of Loki's clan all stared at Noah with unprecedented curiosity. They seemed to be very interested in Noah's upcoming battle. The level of the 17th floor's floor master was classified as LV4. If Noah could really take care of this floor's floor master alone, it could prove that his strength was definitely around LV5. This was also the reason why Finn invited Noah to go with them, to test the range of Noah's strength. In this regard, Noah had already expected it, so he did not refuse. After all, no matter how Finn tested, Noah's true strength was still hidden deep within his body. He would definitely not expose it in this place. Under the gaze of the group of Loki's clan, Noah lifted his feet and slowly stepped into the vast hall. Whoosh! A gust of wind from an unknown source swept across the spacious cavern, stirring up a cloud of fine dust in the entire cavern that looked like a hall. Noah walked against the wind. His footsteps did not show any confusion as he walked forward. A water-like golden ripple fluctuated out from the space around Noah, and a gorgeous knight's sword that was blooming with golden brilliance popped out. Before that, Noah had already reached out his hand, grabbed the hilt of the golden sword, and pulled out the famous sword in the stone from his treasure vault, and pointed it diagonally to the ground. Seeing this scene, the group of people from the Rocky clan were all stunned. "Sword!" Rifaya exclaimed in surprise. "Sword came out from the space? Speaking of which, when we first met little brother, something similar happened, right?" Tiona looked at Tyogni. When little brother was about to escape, the golden ripple suddenly appeared around little brother, and he pulled out a necklace that emitted a strong light from the ripple, blocking our vision, and then little brother escaped. "Now that you mention it, it seems to be true." Tyogni seemed to have remembered. "Is that the effect of some magic or item?" Finn and Bert did not say anything. They just looked at Noah's gradually moving back, as if they did not want to miss any details. AIC, in particular, stared at Noah with her beautiful, almost transparent eyes. She didn't even blink. Under such circumstances, Noah suddenly stopped his footsteps. Crack! At this time, a cracking sound was heard. The group of Loki's clan members held their breaths, and their eyes suddenly turned to the wall. It was an extremely flat wall that seemed to be made of ice. Podgy, cracking sounds could be heard from the wall. From top to bottom, a huge crack appeared on the wall as if it had been split open. Piak, piak, piak. The sound grew louder and louder, causing the cracking sound to gradually become an extremely heavy sound wave. It shook the entire cavern, causing the ground of the cavern to tremble slightly. In the next instant, the cracks reached their limit. Bang! Accompanied by a loud shattering sound, the huge wall directly burst open, turning into ice-like rocks that gradually collapsed and rolled to the ground, making a loud bang and raising a cloud of dust. Soon after, everyone present saw it. Inside the wall that had exploded, there was a colossal object within the flying sand and dust. It was a humanoid creature with grayish-brown skin and long black hair that reached to the base of its neck. It was about 7 or 8 meters tall. The gigantic creature suddenly opened its eyes. The whites of its eyes were completely black, like those of a demon. Woo 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 woo. It was like crying, but it shook the entire atmosphere and turned into a shock wave. A roar that shook the air was released from the mouth of the dark giant. That was the floor master of the 17th floor. Goliath. Bang! The huge monster named Goliath broke through the wall, and with a brutal aura, like a moving mountain, it charged in the direction of Noah. Gazing at the attacking giant and feeling the earth being shaken by the giant's charge, Noah's eyes flashed with a glint. Bang! In the next moment, the human, who was completely disproportionate to the giant's size, stomped on the ground. In a heavy muffled sound, he did not retreat but rushed toward the attacking giant. Not long after, two figures, one big and one small, suddenly came into contact. Shocking shockwaves spread out at the same time, blowing in all directions. That was the aftermath of Goliath's huge fist landing on the ground. That attack power, in terms of the strength item of ability value, was definitely above any LV 5 or even LV 6 or above. This was not strange at all. Although in terms of level classification, Goliath's level was only LV 4, just like how the boss in the game could not be weaker than players of the same level in terms of attributes. In terms of physical ability alone, Goliath was definitely stronger than any LV 5 or even LV 6. However, even so, in terms of overall strength, Goliath's level was still only LV4. Therefore, the dominance of the battle was almost seized by Noah in an instant. Swish! After Goliath's attack, it could be said to be fierce. In addition to attacking, the golden sword drew a sword shadow, like a sword curtain, shrouding the direction of Goliath. Poochie! 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 Without any surprise, the blade of the golden sword of victory, Caliban, which was definitely the highest level above level A, cut through Goliath's thick skin. Boo, 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 boo. Goliath let out a painful roar. The pupils of Finn and the other level 1 adventurers who were watching all shrank. So fast. AIC's expression was also dignified. Noah's sword was really too fast. It was so fast that the group of level 1 adventurers could barely see the blade. But the more amazing thing was still to come. Compared to Goliath, the unbelievably small human held a sword that glowed with a golden light. Like a whirlwind, he moved around Goliath. The sword in his hand thrust forward, flicked upward, and slashed vertically. Every strike was extremely fierce, like a storm. Poochie! 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 Every time the blade collided with the giant's body, a piece of skin on the giant's body would be cleanly cut, turning into a wound that oozed blood, causing the dark giant to roar in pain again and again. The exquisite sword skills made AIC, who was also a sword expert, feel as if she had found a treasure. She was intoxicated as she watched. Finn, who was the most careful observer of the battle, found something and frowned. No, the wound is still too shallow, indeed. Although Noah's attack was extremely sharp, and the weapon was also the highest level, Goliath's body was so big that the slash that could cause fatal injuries to ordinary people could only leave a shallow wound on his skin. This was the advantage of having a huge body. However, there were advantages and disadvantages. At least, compared to Noah's movements, Goliath's movements were really clumsy and pitiful. It was also because of this that Goliath was only at level 4. Boo, 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 boo. As if the pain from his body had stimulated his ferocity, Goliath's sobbing roar sounded again. He raised his fist and slammed it down. Boom! The ground was hit directly by the huge fist, shaking like an earthquake, setting off waves of impact and flying dust. However, at the same time, Noah had already leaped high into the air. Taking advantage of the moment when Goliath's body was still in a stiff state due to the fierce attack, he landed on Goliath's arm. With a tap of his toes, he moved along Goliath's huge arm and charged toward Goliath's face. Then he slashed down fiercely at Goliath's pitch-black eyes. This sword was like a falling meteor, fast and unstoppable. Poochie! After the familiar cutting sound, a huge wound was left on Goliath's face. A huge wound that almost covered the entire face. Chapter 852. Woo 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 woo. When the huge wound that almost covered Goliath's entire face and looked like it had split his head in half appeared on his face, Goliath's voice finally carried an extremely obvious pain. However, this attack had also completely aroused the ferocity in Goliath's heart, causing him to roar repeatedly as he crazily smashed his fists into the ground. Suddenly, the entire ground began to tremble. Loud, muffled sounds continued to reverberate in the air, setting off waves of wind and dust that filled every corner. Even so, compared to the pitch-black giant, the tiny human was still nimbly moving his body, tangling with the giant, dodging the incoming heavy punches. Like a sword dance, he slashed down with lightning speed, adding new wounds to the pitch-black giant's body. Looking at the rather shocking scene, the group of adventurers of Loki's clan were already speechless, and all their attention was drawn away. Only Finn remained calm. He glanced at Bert, who had a serious expression on his face. "Bo-Tay, do you still doubt his strength?" "Mph." Werewolf Bert didn't say anything. He only snorted coldly and didn't deny Noah's claims. "You're so strong, sweetie." Even Tiona couldn't help but praise. "His swordsmanship is really powerful. This is the first time I've seen someone other than AIC use such powerful and beautiful swordsmanship. Also, that sword is also a divine weapon." Tioni turned his attention to Noah's sword in the stone. Goliath's skin is very thick. To be able to cut through such thick skin without much effort, that weapon is definitely comparable to a level 1 weapon used by a level 1 adventurer, right? Even so, Miss AIC won't lose to a guy like that. Rafia turned around, looking like she would always be on AIC's side. Miss AIC is the best. Well, of course Ike's is very powerful as well. Finn, Tiona, and Tiona laughed bitterly. AIC, on the other hand, didn't care about the opinions of others. She was still staring at Noah, who was entangled with the giant. If one looked closely, they would discover that, unknowingly, one of AIC's hands had involuntarily reached for the sword at her waist. Woo 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 woo. On the other side, Goliath's unique roar, which sounded like he was crying, was also constantly ringing out. He quickly smashed his fist down, and the huge force brought about a strong wind that was strong enough to blow down trees. Bang! It was still the same dull and loud sound. Goliath's fist couldn't touch Noah at all, and Noah easily dodged it. Noah, who only moved slightly to the side of Goliath's smashing fist, avoided the direct strike, but bore the brunt of the violent shockwaves stirred up by this strike. He swung his sword, slicing it across Goliath's wrist. With a tearing sound, Goliath's entire wrist was cut open, bringing with it a burst of dark red blood. It made the fist connected to his wrist look as if it would fall off at any moment. It was extremely ghastly. Woo 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 woo. Goliath let out a roar, and suddenly attacked with his other fist. It was like a huge rock falling from the sky, bringing with it a whistling sound as it fell on Noah's head. However, Noah, who had basically gotten used to Goliath's attack frequency, didn't choose to dodge this time. Instead, he nimbly turned around, stretched out his empty hand, and incredibly attached it to Goliath's arm. When Goliath withdrew his fist, he was pulled up together with Goliath's arm. Clang! The next moment, the strike turned into a dazzling golden moon arc, bringing with it an incessant sword sound, and fiercely fell on Goliath's arm. Poochie! This time, the tearing sound was louder than any of the previous strikes, and the splashing blood was thicker than any of the previous strikes. Under that dazzling golden moon arc, Goliath's entire arm was cut off, and with a boom, it fell to the ground. Woo 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 woo. His arm was cut off by Noah all of a sudden, making Goliath issue a heart-wrenching scream. It had to be said that in terms of basic ability value, Goliath's strength and durability were extremely outstanding. Even LV6 adventurers couldn't reach them. However, in the two basic ability values of dexterity and agility, Goliath may not even be as good as LV2 adventurers. With such a huge difference in physical ability, Goliath was destined to only be a meat shield. In the face of a skilled opponent like Noah, he could only take a beating. Under the severe pain, Goliath knelt on the ground with one knee, but he let the broken arm flow with thick blood. The remaining fist was like a giant stick sweeping out, madly waving in the direction of Noah. At this time, Noah, who was trying his best to cut off one of Goliath's arms, had already let go of the arm when it fell to the ground, and was completely powerless in the air. Therefore, in the face of the wildly sweeping giant arm, Noah could only twist his body, letting his whole upper body bend down. Woo! Goliath's huge arm directly swept past Noah's face, and the turbulent airflow on it even blew off some of Noah's hair. And that huge turbulence also lifted Noah's body, making him somersault a few times in the air, and was instead blown into the air higher than Goliath. Woo 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 woo. A loud and harsh roar resounded throughout the cave. In the air, Noah looked down at Goliath, who was kneeling on one knee on the ground, finally using his empty hand to hold his broken arm, and letting out a roar full of anger, pain, ferocity, and madness. Noah's dark and deep eyes fluctuated with a frightening expression. Then, it's time to end this. After saying that, Noah suddenly tightened his grip on the sword in the stone. Clang! The body of the sword in the stone, which was flowing with a golden radiance, suddenly burst out with a dazzling golden light. The Night King Artoria's holy sword was known as the strongest holy sword of mankind. The real name of the Sword of Excalibur was the Noble Phantasm's real name. After it was released, it could transform the owner's magic into light, and then be released from the front of the holy sword like a beam of light, turning into a true slash made of light, destroying everything in its path. Because of its scale and destructive power, it was classified as a noble phantasm that was more powerful than a noble phantasm. And if the noble phantasm named Excalibur's ability was to release a slash like a flood of light, then the noble phantasm named Caliban's ability was to turn itself into light. Therefore, at this moment, the Caliban in Noah's hand became a beam of light. Caliban, the golden sword of victory. The moment the noble phantasm's real name was released, a dazzling golden light fell from the sky at a speed faster than the speed of sound, like a falling meteor, cutting through the air and space, flashing through the air. Then, it fell into Goliath's huge roaring mouth. Poochie! The meteor-like vortex of light fiercely pierced through Goliath's mouth. Goliath's roaring came to an abrupt end. Poochie poochie! A large amount of blood gushed out from Goliath's pierced mouth like a fountain. Then, Goliath's body began to gradually lose its color, and its aura was also constantly flowing out of Goliath's body until it was completely annihilated. Pang! Goliath's huge body, which was 7 or 8 meters tall, suddenly turned into ashes and scattered on the ground. What followed was a magic stone that was as tall as a person. It was as big as a rock, and it fell heavily to the ground. Wielding the sword in the stone, Noah slowly floated down from the sky filled with ashes. It did not take long for him to land before the huge magic stone that was as big as a rock. Behind him was a huge crystal. Around him was a sky full of ashes. In such a scene, the tall and straight figure standing in the center made everyone sluggish, falling into a state of absent-mindedness. Chapter 853. Who? The wind once again blew through the huge cavern, slowly blowing away the pile of ashes that was Goliath's body. Standing in front of the magic stone that was taller than him, Noah let out a deep breath and murmured, "Next, let's see if it works." In fact, Noah was not very interested in Goliath. Unlike ordinary adventurers, Noah did not want to obtain magic stones and dropped items from the dungeon to exchange for money, nor did he want to conquer powerful monsters to become famous. He only wanted to train his ability value and make himself stronger. Under such circumstances, instead of racking his brains to defeat the powerful floor master, Noah would rather continue to lead the monster army to train. That would be more efficient. Of course, defeating the floor master would give him many times more experience points than ordinary monsters. If it wasn't for Noah's extreme training method, perhaps defeating the floor master would have allowed him to gain more growth. In the past, Noah had always felt that it was better to lead more monsters to train than to defeat the floor master. However, after learning that the condition for leveling up was to do great deeds, which was similar to defeating a stronger opponent, Noah had the idea of fighting Goliath. Knowing that Finn wanted to test him, he still accepted the invitation to go with him. Firstly, Noah felt that Finn would not know the extent of his true strength. Secondly, it was because of Goliath. An opponent stronger than himself? Is that referring to Noah's full strength in the true sense of the situation where he even used his authority? Or did it mean that the level of the grace given by the gods was lower than the opponent's level? It was to prove this point that Noah targeted Goliath. If it was the former, then even if Noah defeated Goliath, he should not be able to level up. If it was the latter, then by the next time Noah updated his ability value, he would have definitely leveled up. After all, in terms of levels, Goliath was a LV4 floor master, and Noah was only LV1. If defeating an opponent with a higher level than oneself was considered a great achievement, then challenging an opponent with a higher level than oneself and challenging the floor master was still not enough to level up, then more than half of Eulalie's members would not be stuck at LV1. The next step was to wait until they returned and have Haz-T help Noah upgrade his ability. Whether or not Noah could level up would depend on this. Right at this moment, a loud shout rang out. Amazing! Noah was startled by the loud cry. Before Noah could react, Tiona rushed in from outside the cave and grabbed onto one of Noah's arms as she yelled impatiently. What was that last ray of light? Was it a skill? Or magic? Being questioned by Tiona in such a furious manner, even Noah could not help but feel shocked. He was nearly incapable of responding. Then Finn and the others came over as well. Tiona, Finn warned with a stern expression. An adventurer's ability value is a secret belonging to the individual and their clan. It cannot be made public. You are violating the rules. Sigh, Tiona puffed up her cheeks in dissatisfaction. What's wrong with that? If worse comes to worst, I'll just keep my mouth shut. All right, stop messing around, you idiot. Tiona pulled the reluctant Tiona off Noah. You're making things very difficult for her. There's nothing to be troubled about. Noah revealed a wry smile and raised the sword in the stone. He showed no intention of hiding it and simply revealed it. That is not my skill, nor my magic. It is just this sword's ability. The sword's ability? Finn and the others were stunned. The sword's ability? Ace stared intently at the sword in the stone in Noah's hand as if she wanted to see something from the sword. She looked rather adorable when she stared at it. In the face of Finn and the others' doubts, Noah naturally would not explain the origin of the noble artifact. That would only make things more confusing. So, Noah simply said so. Well, you can just treat it as a magic sword that will never be broken. A magic sword that will never shatter. Both Tiona and Tiona cried out in surprise. A magic sword. It could release magic but had a limited number of uses. Once the number of uses was exhausted, it would directly break. Even if it was a substitute, a weapon that didn't require chanting or any other conditions to use magic would definitely make anyone drool. Its market price, conservatively estimated, was at least 1 million Varus. It was both a magic sword and a luxury item. If there was no limit to the number of uses for such a miraculous weapon, it would be more precious than anything else in the world. At the very least, the members of Loki's clan looked at the sword in the stone in a different light. Leafia almost subconsciously retorted. If there is a magic sword that will never be broken, Eulalie. No, the whole world would be shocked and go crazy. I have never even heard of such a magic sword. Finn, Tiona, and Tiona did not say anything, but they tacitly agreed with Leafia's words. To be honest, they did not really believe it either. After all, to the people of this world, magic was very important. It was something that could be said to be a sure-kill skill. A magic sword as a magic sword as a magic sword was extremely precious. If there was a magic sword that would never be broken, then such a magic sword would definitely be a major invention that could shake the whole world. In that case, how could others easily believe it? In response, Noah only curled his lips and smiled. I don't want you to believe it. It's just that you want to know, so I'm telling you. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. After saying that, Noah threw the weapon in his hand that was enough to shake the whole world in the eyes of Finn and the others. A golden ripple appeared out of thin air and swallowed the knight's sword that was thrown into the air. Then, it contracted and disappeared. Seeing this, Tiona asked curiously, "Then what is this?" Hearing this, Noah glanced at Finn and the others and said with a smile that did not seem like a smile, "An independent space that can store items. If I tell you this, you won't believe it, right?" Everyone fell silent. An independent space that can store items? Just like what Noah said, it was something that could not be trusted. In this world, apart from adventurers, there was another type of person who would enter the underground city. They were non-combatants, known as supporters. As non-combatants, supporters existed to be responsible for the management of the adventurer's luggage and backup weapons, as well as the support of the items and the recovery of magic stones. If the adventurers had to carry their luggage and backup weapons, as well as the recovery of magic stones, not only would it affect the battle, but it would also be very inefficient. Therefore, when exploring the dungeon, the support in the team was a very important help. Not only could they allow the adventurers to fight without any worries, but they could also be responsible for other trivial matters and increase the efficiency of conquering the underground city. How could such an existence not be important? However, if there was really an independent space that could store items, there would basically be no need for supporters, and there would be a huge change in the strategy of conquering the underground city. This was also something that could shake the world. Who would be willing to believe it unconditionally? "Let's not talk about this anymore," Finn said with a smile as he suppressed his various thoughts in his heart. "Let's go to level 18 and have a good rest." Noah waved his hands to show that it was not a problem. "Hey, little brother." Tiona pointed at the huge arm that had fallen to the ground not far away and did not disappear with Goliath. "That's the dropped items and magic stones of the floor owner. It's very valuable and can definitely make you a huge profit. How are you going to deal with it?" "The dropped items and magic stones of the floor owner?" Noah nodded. "That's worth retrieving." As soon as he finished speaking, Noah waved his hand. Two huge golden ripples suddenly fluctuated between Goliath's arm and the magic stone, causing the two items to sink and disappear. Looking at this scene, everyone's eyes flickered, and they remained silent. Could there really be an independent space in this world that could store items? Chapter 854. Finally, we can rest. After passing through the slanted cave, Tiona immediately stretched her body. The members of the Rocky tribe heaved a sigh of relief, and the tense expressions on their faces began to relax. Noah, who was walking at the back of the team, looked forward through the cavernous passage. Noah was more or less surprised by the scene in front of him. This was the underground city. As an underground labyrinth, there shouldn't be any breathtaking scenery here. However, at this moment, Noah really wanted to exclaim at the scenery in front of him. A warm light that was no different from the sun shone down from above, illuminating the vast grassland. This place was full of gentle light and clean air that didn't match the underground labyrinth full of monsters. Thick trees covered with moss. clear rivers that emitted gurgling sounds. In the sky, countless crystals grew seamlessly at the top of this floor, emitting a gentle light like the sun. The light that was no different from the sun was emitted from the crystals that covered the entire ceiling. It made this underground labyrinth look as if it had a sky. It was extremely beautiful. At this moment, Noah didn't even want to believe that he was in the underground city. Although the other floors were not without light, every place was a boring labyrinth, stone passages, and caverns. Coupled with the endless monsters, it was extremely annoying. Compared to those places, this place was simply heaven. The sky will adjust its brightness according to time, so this small world also has morning, noon, and night. Finn, who had been paying attention to Noah, explained when he saw Noah's surprised expression. The changes in time are not stable, and there are some slight differences with the surface. The time difference also fluctuates from time to time, so don't think that the daytime here is the same as the daytime above. Perhaps, Eulalie has already ushered in the night. Is that so? Noah nodded, but he still looked at the beautiful scenery in front of him, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. The underground city is really incredible. That's why it can attract so many adventurers. Finn smiled and immediately ordered the people around him. All right, we'll set up camp here and wait for Riveria and Gareth's team to join us. The reinforcements will leave behind everything you need to set up camp, and then sell the magic stones and dropped items you've collected on the streets. Our goal is even lower, where the things are more valuable. Don't let the things on the upper levels take up space, understand? Yes. Some of the supporters who were carrying luggage immediately responded and started to set up camp together with the adventurers who were in charge of fighting. On the street? Noah looked at Tiona in surprise. In other words, there are villages or towns here. Yes. Tiona nodded. Some distance away from here, there's a town run by a middle-leveled adventurer. It's similar to the dormitory street in the dungeon. In the past, the guild had set up a large-scale relay base in the dungeon so that the adventurers could explore the floors that they had yet to reach. That town was the prototype of this plan, Tjorn explained. However, although the 18th floor is a safe floor where there won't be any monsters, there will still be monsters from other floors that will arrive here and launch attacks. In order to survive the attacks of the monsters, the stronghold will have to hire adventurers who are level 3 and above to defend it. In addition to the costs of maintaining the stronghold, the huge costs directly caused the plan to be put on hold, so the guild gave up on this plan. However, after that, the adventurers who were able to reach this floor took over this plan and built a stronghold town on this floor, Tiona said as though she recalled something. By the way, little brother, if you intend to purchase the map of the floors behind, it seems like you'll have to be fleeced. Fleeced? Noah asked curiously. What do you mean? There are indeed many adventurers doing business in the town, but the prices of weapons, items, food, and other items are several times more expensive than those in Eulalia, Tiona said with a wry smile. It's not easy to secure supplies in the dungeon. Even water, food, and other supplies are difficult to supply. The support can only carry a limited number of items, so the prices are raised on purpose. It was the same logic as water being the most valuable thing in the desert. In a dangerous place like the dungeon, if one used up all their life-saving items, it would be extremely dangerous. Similarly, water and food were indispensable to people. However, there was no way to replenish supplies in the dungeon, so they could only purchase them in the town. In that case, the rarer something was, the more valuable it was. Since they had to buy it no matter what and couldn't be sold in other places, it was normal for the prices to be raised. On the contrary, if you intend to sell your items in the dungeon, the prices will be very, very low, Tiona said as though she was venting her frustrations. The items that can be carried are limited. When the magic stones and looted items fill up the backpack, we have to sell some of them. The adventurers in the town know this, so they'll lower the prices and sell them at a high price. They'll make a lot of money. Low price income. Selling them at a high price. This way, the adventurers would make a lot of money. I reckon that the prices of the dungeon maps here are several times more expensive than those sold in the guild. Tiona chuckled gloatingly. Little brother, you've just earned a lot from Goliath. This amount of money shouldn't be much. Noah rolled his eyes. How would Tiona know? To Noah, money wasn't an issue anymore. Of course, that didn't mean that Noah would be willing to be cheated. Don't chat, Finn said helplessly. We don't have enough manpower. Go and help. Got it. Both Tiona and Tiny nodded and walked towards the camp. Noah stood alone on the grassland and gazed at the beautiful scenery before him as he walked forward. Behind Noah, a series of footsteps slowly caught up with him. Noah was speechless as he turned his head and looked behind him. AIC followed Noah silently, her eyes fixed on Noah's back. Noah stopped in his tracks. AIC stopped in her tracks. Noah turned his body sideways. AIC immediately turned around, not letting Noah's back out of her line of sight. The corner of Noah's mouth twitched. He took a deep breath and started to spin. AIC blinked her eyes and started to spin around Noah without any hesitation. She wanted to look at Noah's back no matter what. This scene lasted for nearly a minute. After a minute, Noah stopped and covered his face. He couldn't bear to look at it. What kind of child's game was this? Most importantly, AIC played with Noah for a minute. Could it be that under AIC's beautiful appearance and impressive strength, there was a heart full of childishness hidden under her childishness? Natural? This girl, could it be that she's a natural airhead? With a bitter expression, Noah looked at AIC and sighed. Do you really want to see my ability value that much? AIC was startled. Although her expression didn't change, there was a hint of surprise in her eyes as if she was saying, "How did you know?" Thus, Noah was sure. This girl, there's definitely something wrong with her. With such an obvious reaction, it's easy to guess, right? At that moment, Noah's expression became even more indescribable. Don't you know that a person's ability value is a secret? AIC nodded. I know. You still want to see my ability value even if you know. Noah couldn't help but ask. Why do you want to know my ability value so much? AIC went silent. Noah didn't rush her. He just looked at AIC and quietly waited for her answer. The surroundings were filled with an atmosphere of silence. After a while, AIC raised her head and looked into Noah's eyes as she said, "Don't worry. Why are you so strong?" Chapter 855. How can you be so strong? Hearing AIC's words, Noah was slightly startled. To be honest, Noah really didn't know what AIC's definition of strong was based on. In front of AIC, Noah had not used his authority, nor did he use the unique combat method from the Gate of Babylon. He had only used enhance and magic cannon once. The rest of the time, he basically showed his close combat strength and the ability of his noble phantoms. If Noah didn't use the power of authority, Gate of Babylon, and the treasures inside it, or even enhance and magic cannon, he could only rely on his own melee ability. Even if the basic ability induced by grace was included, Noah's combat power was only comparable to a LV-5 adventurer. This strength, AIC herself could completely reach or even surpass it. Then why would AIC care about this level of strength? Didn't all the level 1 adventurers in the family of Loki have this strength? Could it be that AIC would care so much about every strong person of the same level? Noah couldn't help but put his hand on his shoulder. Thinking about how AIC was so obsessed with his ability value, he suddenly said with some uncertainty, "What you mean should be why I can have strength that ordinary adventurers can't reach without receiving the grace, right?" AIC nodded gently. Her pretty face that didn't show any emotion revealed a serious atmosphere. Obviously, she was very concerned about this question. Knowing this, Noah realized that his previous thoughts might have been wrong. Originally, Noah thought that the reason why AIC kept staring at him was because he forced her to leave the first time they met and she was unwilling to accept it. Now it seemed that AIC was only concerned about how Noah could have the strength to force her to retreat without receiving the grace, right? And it was the kind that cared a lot. But Noah felt that there was no need to hide it, so he simply asked directly, What do you plan to do after knowing? Hearing this, AIC met Noah's gaze, lowered her head slightly, and said in a mosquito-like voice, I want to become stronger. Become stronger. It was completely unlike the thoughts of a weak girl whose appearance was comparable to that of a goddess. Noah scratched his cheek and asked in confusion, Since you want to become stronger, why don't you focus on conquering the dungeon? With the grace of the gods, the adventurers could completely be like the characters in the game, relying on killing monsters to gain experience points to allow themselves to grow. This didn't mean that the only way to become stronger was to kill monsters and level up, but it was undoubtedly a good shortcut. At least, from Noah's point of view, AIC was better off raiding dungeons and earning experience points instead of training in the deep mountains and forests for a few years to become stronger like he did in the past. In that case, it would definitely be more efficient than cultivating mindlessly. Noah was in such a situation now. To put it bluntly, after these few days of extreme training, Noah's basic abilities had basically reached the S stage, and the growth was much faster than when he was training in the mountains and forests. Conservatively speaking, the growth of these few days was enough to surpass the results of Noah's training in the mountains and forests. In that case, there was no reason to give up on this kind of rapid growth and turn to mindlessly training, right? It was a pity that Noah had forgotten. The so-called grace of the gods was just a catalyst that allowed the recipient to gain experience points to draw out the possibility in the body. If the possibility in a person's body was not high, then no matter how many monsters were killed and how much experience points were gained, they would not be able to grow. This was the reason why there were so many adventurers in Eulalia. There were people raiding dungeons every day, people killing monsters every day, and people gaining experience points every day, but there were only those who were truly strong. AIC was able to become the fastest person in the world to reach LV2 in just 1 year. She was also one of the few first-level adventurers in the entire Orally. She was even considered to be the strongest existence in LV5 by the gods. Her potential was so high that it could be imagined. But no matter how high it did not mean that there was no limit. AIC lowered her head again, and her voice became very obvious. She was suppressing her emotions. I have reached the peak. When he heard this sentence, Noah almost did not understand what it meant. However, Noah did not really understand what grace was after all. AIC's words of reaching the peak made Noah realize. The girl in front of him had probably reached the limit of level 5, right? The possibility in her body had long been drawn out during the years of fighting in the dungeons. Noah heard that AIC had reached level 5 for more than 3 years. 3 years. With AIC's growth rate, it was not strange that she had reached the upper limit. Therefore, AIC could be evaluated as the strongest existence in LV5. Perhaps, no matter how many monsters AIC killed now, her basic ability proficiency would only increase by a few points. That way, she would not be able to become significantly stronger. Because of this, AIC cared about Noah. Because AIC saw another way to improve herself from Noah. Is that so? Noah smiled bitterly. If that's the case, then why don't you think of a way to level up? Level up? AIC reacted to this sentence and raised her head to look at Noah. If our basic ability is to draw out the possibility in the body, then level up is to increase the possibility, right? Noah crossed his arms. The Lord God of my family once said that the so-called upgrade is the enhancement of the basic ability that can be called evolution. If the improvement of the basic ability is compared to increasing the amount of water in a cup, then the upgrade is the improvement of the cup itself. You should understand this, right? Level up. AIC's eyes suddenly began to flicker. Noah knew that AIC listened to his words. If you level up to level 6, not only can you get the enhancement beyond the basic ability and become stronger, but you can also strengthen yourself as a vessel and continue to carry more possibilities. Noah said as if it had nothing to do with him. Instead of coming to me to find a way to become stronger, you might as well rely on the things you are familiar with to become stronger. Speaking of this, Noah suddenly remembered his power and involuntarily said such a sentence. Well, if I can use the incarnation of the priest now, then I can give you protection and temporarily increase your strength. Protection? AIC suddenly raised her head. What is that? Ah. Noah came back to his senses and smiled awkwardly. Nothing, forget about it. After saying that, Noah was about to turn around and leave, but the corner of his clothes was tightly grabbed by a jade hand. AIC stared into Noah's eyes and asked very persistently, "What is protection?" Noah's mouth twitched. While regretting his slip of the tongue, he couldn't help but look at AIC's lips. One of the powers of Noah's 10 incarnations was the priest. In addition to being able to give the power of language and text, it could also give protection to others. If the ability to protect AIC was used, then the protection refined by the power of the curse could become AIC's reliance. Before the power was exhausted, it could strengthen AIC's strength. However, it must be done by directly injecting it into the body of the target. To put it simply, it was kissing. Because of this, Noah subconsciously looked at AIC's lips that were close to him. On the other hand, Ace grabbed the corner of Noah's shirt tightly and stared at him. Her beautiful face inched closer to Noah's. The distance between a man and a woman's face was extremely short. As long as one of them slightly moved forward, they would be able to capture the other's lips. Not to mention Noah and AIC, from an outsider's point of view, these two people were looking at each other affectionately and were about to kiss. Thus, a hysterical voice rang out. "Stop it!" Chapter 856. Stop it right there. When this voice rang out and drilled into Noah and AIC's ears, a figure had already darted over and pulled AIC away before she could react. Noah only felt a soft body squeezing between him and AIC. Then AIC, who was clutching the corner of his shirt tightly and putting her face in front of him, was pulled away. As for the person who squeezed between Noah and AIC, he shielded AIC behind him. He spread his arms and glared fiercely at Noah as if he was trying to protect AIC. Only then did Noah get a good look at the person's appearance. It was the pure-looking, long-eared, and outstanding archmage that Loki's spawn was preparing to inherit Riveria Leafia. At this moment, this elven girl, who looked to be only 15 or 16 years old, shielded AIC behind her. There was a trace of nervousness on her face, but more of it was determination. She pretended to glare fiercely at Noah. "No, you're not allowed to bully Miss AIC." It wasn't just her expression. Even her voice was trembling slightly. It was obvious that the elven girl was very nervous. However, even so, Leafia still insisted on shielding the bewildered AIC behind her. She stood in front of Noah with an imposing manner as if she was going to feed a tiger with her body. This amused Noah so much that he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I don't intend to bully Miss AIC, do I?" "But, liar." Leafia mustered up her courage and said, "Undoubtedly, you were so close to Miss AIC just now." Noah raised an eyebrow and said with a half-smile, "So, being close to her means you intend to bully Miss AIC?" Leafia was speechless. Or rather, it was as if the elven girl had only just calmed down. She turned around and looked at AIC, asking weakly, "Miss AIC, did he bully you?" "Leafia." AIC shook her head as if she had only just realized what had happened. It was also as if she had only just realized that the person protecting her was Leafia. "It's not like that." This sentence made Rifia choke. "I say, even if I wanted to bully your family's Miss AIC, the famous swordswoman is not someone that anyone can bully, right?" Noah laughed out loud as if he was amused. "Besides, if I really wanted to bully Miss Wallenstein and had the ability to do so, you wouldn't be able to do anything, right?" "That's not the case," Leafia retorted. "If you intend to bully Miss AIC, then I will definitely protect her." "Oh!" Noah suddenly smiled. "In other words, no matter how strong you are, and whether you can defeat me, you will jump out to protect Miss Wallenstein, right?" Leafia nodded heavily. Although there was still some nervousness on her face, she did not show any signs of hypocrisy or hesitation. This also made Noah understand why the elven girl was so wary of him all this time. Perhaps he just didn't want AIC to come into contact with a stranger like Noah and be deceived by a stranger like Noah? Is that so? Noah looked at Leafia mockingly. Looks like you really like your family's Miss AIC. Like. Leafia's face instantly turned red and she started stammering. It's not like that. Oh. Noah was also amused by Leafia's behavior and said with a mischievous tone. Does that mean you hate your family's Miss AIC? Of course not. Leafia's voice was even more exaggerated than before as she spoke in a high-pitched tone. How could I possibly hate Miss AIC? What? Noah shrugged. Doesn't that mean you like her? No. It's not like that. That's not right. It's like that? That's not right either. Leafia fell into a state of confusion. She was so flustered that she did not know what to do. She flailed her arms and legs and almost fainted. Seeing this, Noah, who had only intended to make a joke, couldn't help but feel strange. Could it be that this elven girl really had some strange thoughts about AIC, who was of the same gender? Or was it just pure longing? Leafia? AIC tilted her head and looked at the confused Leafia. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Noah shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He extended his hand and stroked the flustered Leafia's head. All right, I was just teasing you. Calm down. Feeling the hand stroking her head, Leafia was taken aback and didn't react for a moment. Noah looked at AIC and said, Since you followed me, why don't you lead the way? Since you're following me, why don't you lead the way? I'm going to the dungeon to buy a dungeon map. AIC blinked her eyes, but she didn't reject. She nodded and spoke softly to Leafia. Leafia, help me tell Finn that I'm going to the town. Leafia, who was still in a daze from Noah's stroking, nodded her head subconsciously. Then, Noah and AIC looked at each other and walked forward. Only Leafia was left, staring blankly at Noah and AIC who were leaving side by side. This time, her gaze towards Noah was no longer guarded, only a little incredulous. Raising her hand and placing it on her head, Leafia murmured. He touched me. Just as Leafia was still in disbelief, a steady and dignified voice sounded from behind her. Leafia, what are you doing in a place like this? Leafia was shocked. She quickly turned around and looked behind her. There, Finn, Riveria, and Gareth, the three leaders of Loki's clan, walked over, causing Leafia to exclaim in surprise. Lady Riveria? Lady Gareth? Have you arrived? Riveria nodded. Goliath, the owner of the 17th floor, was defeated, so we didn't encounter too many obstacles and just arrived. Where's AIC? Gareth's thunderous voice resounded in the air. The members all said they saw her coming here. You came with her, but why aren't you with her? Hearing Gareth's words, before Leafia could answer, Finn seemed to have thought of something. Could it be that she's with Noah Doria? Yes. Only then did Leafia react. Miss AIC went to the town with that gentleman. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth looked at each other. Is that okay? Riveria directly threw out this question. Letting AIC, as a clan leader, have too much contact with members of other clans will cause a lot of problems. The so-called clan, to put it bluntly, was a clan. Since there were clans, there was bound to be conflict. Whether it was from the perspective of interests or the relationship between the main gods of both sides, as long as there was a small reason, then the relationship between clans would become hostile, and vice versa. Excessive contact with members of other clans would indeed cause a lot of problems. Therefore, under normal circumstances, it was normal for two members of the clan tribe to be on guard against each other. This was also part of the reason why Finn wanted to test Noah's strength. Leafia hesitated for a moment and summoned her courage. I think that gentleman shouldn't be a bad person. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth were startled at the same time. That's an interesting way of putting it. Gareth laughed. Weren't you worried that AIC would come into contact with bad people and have been on guard against that man? Why did you come to this conclusion now? That man? Leafia couldn't help but touch her head. That person touched my head. These words caused Finn and the others to stand up in surprise. Riveria, in particular, was even more surprised. Leafia, you didn't refuse that man to touch you? Rifia nodded, causing Finn, Riveria, and Gareth to look at each other in dismay. Elves were a very arrogant race. It wasn't that the people of this race were very arrogant, but it was the nature of elves. None of the elves were not outstanding in appearance. Because of this, they thought that people of other races were ugly. This made it so that if the elves didn't approve of someone, even the gods wouldn't allow them to touch them. It was equivalent to an instinct of the body. Regardless of whether the elves were willing or not, their bodies would not allow people with ugly hearts and desires to touch them. It was just like how a person's body would instinctively retract their hand when pricked by a needle. Unless it was someone approved of, the elves would instinctively fight back against the existence that intended to touch them. It was for this reason that Leafia, who had her head touched by Noah, found it inconceivable. Undoubtedly, this is the first time we've met, but I didn't reject that gentleman's hand. The elven girl Leafia said. So, I think that gentleman isn't someone with an ugly heart. Riveria, who was also an elf, was the first to agree with Leafia's words. If that's the case, then there's no mistake. All right. Finn pondered for a moment and looked in the direction of the town. Then let's indulge AIC for now. Chapter 857. The 18th floor of the underground city did not have a maze, nor were there any complicated passages. It was just a large circular space. The cliff that surrounded the entire floor extended all the way to the top of the floor where the crystals grew. In the south was the cave that led to the 17th floor. In the north, there were sparse wetlands and forests. Monsters from the other floors usually wandered around here. In the west, there was a huge lake. On the lake, there was a rock island with a huge tree in the center. Under the roots of the huge tree, there was a hole in the tree. That was the entrance to the 19th floor. The town on the 18th floor was located at the highest point of the towering and huge island. It was a town that was completely made of wood. Almost every building in the town was made of wood. The town was built on top of a cliff. Steep slopes could be seen everywhere. Stairs made of round logs were set up everywhere. It was also surrounded by all kinds of crystals and rocks. At first glance, it looked very shabby. In fact, it was really shabby. Because monsters from the other floors would also attack the humans here, based on the nature of the town, the buildings in the town could be built simply. These simple and temporary buildings were almost all shops. Weapons shops, prop shops, inns, and a few other hotels were all shops that served adventurers as customers. And of course, those who could come to the 18th floor and come to this town were all adventurers. Walking on the streets, almost all the people who passed by Noah were adventurers. Only a small number of them were supporters. All of them were either equipped with heavy equipment or carrying extra-large backpacks, giving the entire town a strange and somber atmosphere. Under AIC's lead, Noah walked on this old street. On the street, almost all the adventurers who passed by would look at AIC who was walking with Noah. Their eyes and faces revealed a look of amazement and awe. Amazement was naturally because of AIC's appearance. Awe was directed at AIC's title of Swordswoman. As the Swordswoman, whose reputation was not only limited to Olalai, but also the world, there were almost no adventurers who did not know AIC. AIC seemed to be used to all of this. She still had that expressionless face of hers as she blindly walked forward. Noah was the only one who didn't look in AIC's direction. At this moment, Noah was following AIC's footsteps while observing the items in the surrounding stores and stalls, as well as the prices on the signs in front of the items. He fell into a state of speechlessness. From the beginning until now, Noah had not seen a single item with a price lower than 4 digits. Whether it was weapons, armor, or props, the basic price here was at least 3 zeros. Even food and drinking water were marked with prices of more than 4 digits. They were several times more expensive than outside, and some were even 10 times more expensive. There was only one word to describe it, and that was a pit. However, even though they knew that it was a scam, if the people here needed it, they would still have to buy it with a pained expression. It was because of this that the prices of the items here were so high. Moreover, the shop owners were relying on the fact that people could only buy from them. Not only were they arrogant, they were also lying there without even shouting. They were more arrogant than any adventurer's father. This made Noah have the urge to drag them out and beat them up. Then, not long after, AIC stopped and pointed to a stall in front. There is a map. Noah then retracted his gaze from the surrounding stores and stalls, and looked at the stall in front. There were weapons, armor, and some colorful potions and test tubes. Those potions were elixirs. They were also the so-called recovery potions. There were elixirs that could restore physical strength. There were elixirs that could heal injuries. There were elixirs that could replenish the mental strength consumed by using magic. There were also elixirs that could provide all kinds of support and strengthening. It could be said that everything was here. It was said that there was a type of recovery potion called the panacea that could even heal injuries no matter how serious they were. It had the effect of bringing the dead back to life. Even if one's face was disfigured, with the panacea, one could completely recover. The price of the panacea was around 400,000 to 500,000 veris. In these small stalls that could be seen everywhere, naturally, there was no such thing. Noah was only interested in the map of the underground city. It was a booklet that was made into a booklet. However, the price on the sign in front of the booklet made Noah's eyes twitch. 200,000 veris? This price, how should he describe it? 1 word, scam. 2 words, very scam. 3 words, very scam. At least, Noah remembered that when he went to the guild and asked to buy a detailed map of the underground city, the map was only 30,000 veris. It was almost 7 times more expensive. Rubbing his forehead, Noah walked forward under AIC's gaze, squatted down in front of the stall, and picked up the map. The owner of the stall just lay there, opened one eye, glanced at Noah, and then closed it, not even bothering to look at Noah. With such an attitude, it was impossible to get any customers in Eulalie. Only in the underground city could these guys be so arrogant. The owner of the stall even said this sentence while pretending to be asleep. Just look, don't flip. Who knows if you're going to record it and leave without buying? Noah didn't even bother with the owner of the stall. He roughly flipped through the booklet and found that the map recorded the 1st to 50th levels of the underground city in detail. No wonder it's so expensive, it extends to the 50th level. The maps sold by the guild up to the lower level, which was the 36th level, were only worth 30,000 veris. As there were very few adventurers who had been to the deeper level of the underground city, and the area was huge, it was impossible for people to wander around in such a dangerous place. As a result, the maps of the deeper level of the underground city were not very detailed, so the value of the maps varied. This map recorded the 37th to 50th levels very carelessly. But no matter what, there was still information about the entrance and exit to the upper level and the entrance and exit to the lower level. This was enough to make the map valuable. In the guild, this map could be sold for 70,000 to 80,000 veris, right? In other words, it was still several times more expensive. However, Noah didn't say much. After all, the people here didn't bargain. Noah directly put the booklet in his hand into his arms, took out a bag full of gold coins, threw it on the stall, and turned to leave. This way, Noah would be able to go to the lower floors. Seeing Noah coming back, AIC, who knew the purpose of Noah's trip, spoke directly. "Are you going back?" "Yes." Noah nodded. "This time, I came with you for the map, and also to see if defeating Goliath would allow me, who is only LV1, to level up." "Level up?" AIC looked straight at Noah with an inexplicable color in her eyes. "You're planning to level up in less than 5 days after getting grace?" "Why?" Noah smiled slightly. "Are you afraid that I'll break your world record of being the fastest to reach LV2? Hearing this, AIC shook her head and lowered her head. "It's just that I'm envious of you, being able to become strong so quickly." "Envious?" The smile on Noah's face slowly disappeared and was replaced with a sigh. "Do you want to become strong? Or do you just want to obtain power?" AIC's expression became one of confusion. She looked as though she was asking, "Is there a difference?" "If you want to become strong, there is no shortcut," said Noah calmly. "However, if you want to obtain power, there is no need to limit yourself. Powerful weapons and props can help you reach your goal." After saying that, Noah extended his hand and a golden ripple appeared above him. The ripple bounced off the sword in the stone, which was radiating a golden light. Chang! Noah stabbed the sword in the stone into the ground and stood before AIC. AIC's gaze turned toward the sword in the stone at almost the same time. "I'll lend you this sword for now." Noah turned around. "After you've experienced its power, you can tell me the answer when you return." After saying that, Noah left. AIC looked at the sword in the stone in silence. Chapter 858. When Noah returned to the ground, the sky had just turned dark. In other words, Noah had been fighting in the dungeon for a whole day. It's just that this time, Noah didn't train his basic abilities to the limit. He just killed LV for Floor Master. He wanted to see if he could level up. Driven by such a mood, Noah returned home without any delay. After telling Hestia about killing Goliath, he pulled Hestia, who was speechless, to prepare to upgrade his ability value. Really, LV, one player went to challenge a LV for Floor Master or something. I've never even heard of such a thing before. Sitting on Noah's back, Hestia took out a sharp needle and muttered to herself, "That's right." Also, I've never heard of anyone wanting to level up after receiving the favor for less than 5 days. LV1 and LV2 were the dividing line between junior adventurers and senior adventurers. Only by reaching LV2 could one get the title given by the gods and be called a senior adventurer. Generally speaking, if one wanted to upgrade from LV1 to LV2, it would take at least 3 years. AIC spent a year to upgrade to LV2, which was known as the fastest upgrade record in the world. Upgrading in less than 5 days? That was no longer a question of whether the record could be broken, but a question of whether it was normal. If the gods knew that someone rose to LV2 in less than 5 days, those gods who liked to join in the fun would definitely do a lot of earth-shattering things. In order to prevent such a thing from happening, Hestia did not advocate Noah to consider upgrading early, but to start with magic first. As a result, Noah not only did not listen, but also ran to challenge the floor master of the 17th floor, which made Hestia quite depressed. However, even if depressed, Hestia still did not refuse Noah's request. She pricked her finger with a needle and dripped a drop of blood on Noah's back. The familiar blue light bloomed from the ability value engraving on Noah's back. The mysterious text left Noah's back and moved up and down in the blue light. Hestia updated, modified, and rewrote these mysterious texts to help Noah upgrade the ability value. With the change of the sacred text, above, a brand new value appeared in front of Hestia's eyes. To be honest, apart from other factors, Hestia was also very concerned about whether Noah could level up or not. So, almost as soon as the new ability value appeared, Hestia looked at it. Noah Dori LV. 1 power, S, 968, SS, 1068, durability, S, 980, SS, 1078, dexterity, S, 972, SS, 1085, agility, S, 993, SS, 1093, magic power, A, 888, SS, 1017, magic skills frowny face protection from the world, permanent skill. Equal to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. The moment she saw the ability value, Hestia's eyes widened and she cried out, "What the hell is this?" Noya, who was also looking forward to leveling up, was startled by Hestia's shout. He even stood up subconsciously. But Hestia, who was sitting on Noah's back, was directly flipped over and fell on the bed. Her 2 legs were directly placed on Noah's shoulders, revealing the scenery under her skirt in front of Noah. Not only that, even if she was lying there, Hestia's plump upper body still defied the law of gravity. Noah didn't know where to look and could only helplessly pull Hestia up. "What's wrong?" Why are you making such a fuss? Hestia didn't speak. She just stared at Noah without saying a word. She even moved her face closer to Noah's, to the point where their foreheads were almost touching. Looking at Hestia's cute face slowly moving closer to him, Noah blinked. Do you want to kiss me? Who wants to kiss you? Hestia's pretty face blushed. She suddenly pulled away and stared at Noah. I want to see what kind of structure a freak like you has. Why did your ability value change like that? Hearing Hestia's words, Noah's curiosity was completely aroused. What's my ability value changed? Hestia puffed up her cheeks and recorded all the updated ability values on a parchment paper and handed it to Noah. See for yourself. Noah directly took the parchment paper and looked at the ability value. When he saw his current ability value, he couldn't help but be stunned. What does this mean? Didn't they say that the highest level of basic ability was S stage, and the upper limit of proficiency was 999? Then what's the deal with the SS stage and the thousands of proficiency points? What's going on? Noah cast his gaze on Hestia. Why is this ability value status appearing? How would I know? Hestia said as if she was in a difficult situation. So far, this hasn't happened. I want to ask you what's going on. Noah frowned. For Noah, who wasn't a native of this world, if even Hestia, who was a god and had lived for billions of years, couldn't understand this situation, then it was even more impossible for him to understand. In other words, the SS stage basic ability value and the thousands of proficiency points for each basic ability would become an unsolved mystery. It couldn't be said to be an unsolved mystery. At least, that was what Hestia said. You've exceeded the upper limit of your ability value, Noah. Exceeded the upper limit of my ability value? Noah asked in confusion. Is it possible to exceed the upper limit of a basic ability value? I'm not sure. At least, I've never heard of anyone other than you surpassing the upper limit, Hestia said as she raised a finger. But Noah, I have to tell you that the information about your ability value is the result of long-term verification and analysis since we gods descended to this world. The highest level of basic ability is S stage, and the upper limit of proficiency is 999. This information was also summarized by us gods over the past 1,000 years. It's only because no one has ever exceeded the upper limit that we came up with this theory. What's certain is that as children of this world, there are still possibilities in your body that even we gods can't understand. Perhaps the possibilities in your body are so amazing that you can break the summary of the past 1,000 years. Hestia took the paper from Noah's hand, looked at the numbers on it, and said word by word, "That's right." In other words, you've reached a level that no one has reached in the past 1,000 years. Really? Noah smiled bitterly. But I still haven't been able to level up. No, you killed a LV, for floor master as a LV1. That's already a great achievement. You have indeed accumulated a lot of experience points. Hestia frowned her cute eyebrows. If you were an ordinary level 1, you would have already leveled up. But you haven't leveled up. It seems that your container is too big. If you want to evolve the container itself, you need another condition. Noah was refreshed and quickly asked, "What condition?" You should know that only when your basic ability evaluation reaches D stage or above can you be qualified to level up, right? Hestia said. After all, the basic ability accumulated in a level is just the cornerstone needed to level up. Your current situation is that the container itself is too big. If you want to evolve, you have to lay down more cornerstones. Noah understood. In other words, I have to continue to train my basic ability? That's right. Hestia curled her lips. Although, I don't know if the SS stage of your all ability value is not enough to be your cornerstone and allow you to evolve. I just know how terrifying you are as a vessel. Noah ignored Hestia's sarcasm and slowly tightened his grip on the paper in his hand. Chapter 859. In the deep area of the dungeon, the 37th floor was also known as the White Palace. The reason why it had this name was because it had white walls and a circular structure that looked like a castle. It was a structure composed of large circular walls that were 5 stories high. In the center of this floor, there were stairs that led to the next floor. The area it occupied was almost comparable to a huge city. It was very vast. Of course, as the first floor of the deep area, the monsters on the 37th floor were the most outstanding in the area above the 40th floor. Not only were there many of them, but their levels were also quite high. Even the interval between their birth in the dungeon was very short. If one was not careful, even a level 1 adventurer above level 5 would be besieged to death. One must not be careless. There would be many so-called warrior-type monsters on this floor. Starting from the 15th floor of the middle area of the dungeon, there was a level 2 minotaur monster called the Minotaur. On the 37th floor, there were monsters that were similar to the Minotaur. They had the physique of a ferocious bull. In addition, there were all kinds of monsters that had some similar structures to humans rampaging in this white palace. The levels of these monsters were between level 3 to level 4. In addition, the speed of their birth was very fast. After a while, they would form a certain number and become a real army. Therefore, even a level 1 adventurer of level 5 could not ignore the danger on this floor. Under such circumstances, there was an adventurer whose real level was only level 1 who was deep in the siege of a large group of ferocious bull monsters at this time. Rumble! There were definitely hundreds of ferocious bull monsters holding huge stone weapons. Each monster's weapon had a bright red color, as if it was dyed with blood. With the trembling sound that resounded throughout the entire space, the ferocious bull's eyes were red, and white gas was coming out of its nostrils. Its strong and powerful hooves trampled on the ground and rushed toward the thin figure. The scene of hundreds of huge ferocious bull monsters at least 2 meters tall running in groups. If one word was to describe it, it would be shocking. In the trembling sound of the earth, the distance between the disproportionate monster army and the thin figure was almost wiped out in the blink of an eye. Then, like a tsunami, the endless wave of monsters instantly drowned that figure. Facing the large group of monsters, Noah did not move. His expression did not even change. In his hand was a knight's sword that was very similar to the sword in the stone that he had lent to AIC. Compared to the sword in the stone, this knight's sword was more quaint. However, the golden radiance flowing through it was more dazzling. If the people from the Shape Moon world were here, they would definitely recognize this world-famous weapon. Its name was Excalibur. It was an A++ level relic that was definitely more powerful than the relic of humans and the relic of armies. Holding the famous holy sword in his hand, Noah calmly looked at the group of monsters that were charging at him. It was only until the bull monster that was charging at the forefront that he finally made his move when the white gas that was spurting out of its nostrils almost hit him. Clang! With just a light sidestep, he avoided the charging bull monster. The holy sword in Noah's hand suddenly flashed and turned into a sword light. It swept across the neck of the first monster that was charging in front of him. Poochie! Very neatly, a bull's head fell from the monster's body, bringing a burst of blood mist. It also made the monster, who was at least LV3 or above, stiffen and slowly fall to the ground. At the same time, the ferocious bull monsters jumped, pounced, charged, and waved their weapons to attack Noah. They pounced from the front, back, left, right, and the sky, instantly surrounding Noah. Facing this situation, Noah did not retreat. Instead, he moved forward. With a strange twist, he changed his speed and dodged to the side. At the same time, the cold sword light lit up again. Poochie! The lightning-like sword cut through the arm of the ferocious bull monster and cut it off with a crisp tearing sound, letting the arm fall to the ground. While the monster let out a painful scream, Noah rushed forward, raised his sword, and let the huge bull's head fly to the sky again and fall to the ground. Just like that, Noah was like a leaf in a stormy sea, flashing left and right as the wave of monsters hit back and forth. Sometimes he rushed forward. Sometimes he retreated. Sometimes he dodged to the left. Sometimes he dodged to the right. He didn't let any monster touch his body. Poochie, poochie, poochie. As Noah moved his body agilely, every 2 to 3 seconds, A huge bull head would be tossed into the air, bringing with it bursts of crimson blood that splattered all over the sky. The monsters that fell to the ground turned into ashes one by one, leaving only fist-sized magic stones and horns, completely disappearing from this space. Because of the skill world's protection that could bring great luck, the monsters that Noah killed almost all dropped items. Players could only obtain loot from monsters they killed when they were very lucky. Noah, on the other hand, only obtained magic stones when his luck was really bad. This was the difference. It didn't take long for the hundreds of bull-sized monsters to be completely slaughtered, leaving behind only a pile of magic stones and dropped items. Phew, Noah gently exhaled. Crack. Almost at the same time, the ground in front of him cracked, causing the ferocious bull monsters with red eyes to suddenly drill out of the ground and stare in Noah's direction. The 37th floor was such a terrifying place. The frequency of monsters being born was simply unimaginable. However, for Noah, this situation was something he was happy to see. After all, Noah originally came to the deeper areas to be able to fight for more powerful monsters to hone his basic abilities. Just as Noah was about to continue to rush forward, Noah's heart suddenly moved, causing him to stop. In his heart, on the surface of a roulette connected to 10 patterns, a subtle brilliance flowed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. "I see," Noah murmured. "It's already been a month?" Yes. Noah had been in this world for a full month. Because of the turbulence in between the worlds, it was best not to use Noah's authority for a month when he first arrived in this world. Once used, it would have a great impact on the world. Only when the world adapted to the power in Noah's body that did not belong to this world and was too powerful, could Noah use the power that could kill gods without restraint. Now, a month had passed. This world had finally adapted to Noah's authority. Therefore, Noah's authority had an active reaction. Feeling the activity of the authority in his body, Noah suddenly smiled as he looked at the bull-like monsters that broke out of the ground one after another, gripping their stone weapons tightly as they prepared to charge towards him. Just in time, it's time for me to try my Beast Horde avatar. One of Noah's 10 avatars was the authority of Beast Horde. It was an incarnation that was originally used to summon Bio and Draeger, who were residing in their souls, to fight for Noah. However, when Bio and Draeger's consciousness were removed by Gaia and Aleia, Noah's Beast Horde avatar's ability changed. Now, it was time to test the true power of this avatar. "Thou hast violated the contract and brought evil to the world." When the long-awaited words reverberated in this space, Noah's body suddenly exploded with a shocking amount of magic. The Lord said, "Sinners must be punished. Their backs will be crushed, their bones, hair, and brains will be dug out, and their blood and mud will be trampled on. If I have sharp teeth, I will follow the Lord's words and give the person who violated the contract a hammer of destruction." In Noah's heart, on one of the corners of the stone plate that was connected to the 10 patterns, a pattern of 100 beasts running wildly suddenly lit up. Clang! Suddenly, around Noah's body, a dazzling light burst out. Immediately, in the light, pairs of eyes flashing fiercely appeared one by one. Along with them, there were also many black shadows. Chapter 860. Clang! With Noah as the center, the dazzling light almost illuminated the entire 37th floor of the dungeon. The ferocious bull monsters that had just been born seemed to have instinctively felt that something extremely dangerous was about to be born. They swallowed the roar that had already reached their throats. They actually began to involuntarily retreat, showing some fear. Especially when pairs of flashing eyes and black shadows appeared in the dazzling light, these monsters of LV3 and above all let out threatening cries. That look was simply like a frightened puppy that was trying to scare someone. However, when the dazzling light gradually dimmed, revealing the full appearance of the black shadows, the fierce bull monsters with stone weapons in their hands suddenly froze, and their bodies became sluggish. This was because the black shadows that were born from the dazzling light were exactly the same as them. They had the head of a cow and the body of a human. They were more than 2 meters tall, and the only difference was that they did not hold any stone weapons in their hands. They were monsters with the physique of a cow. Woo 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 woo. The next moment, the fierce bull monsters let out earth-shattering roars. Noah, who was holding the holy sword, stood in the middle of this group of fierce bull monsters. He raised his head and looked at the fierce bull monsters that were frozen in front of him, and a flash of light flashed across his eyes. Woo 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 woo. The fierce bull monsters that lined up around Noah like an army suddenly roared in unison, and in the roar that made the earth tremble, they charged out. Woo 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 woo. The real fierce bull monsters with thick stone weapons in their hands seemed to have been awakened. They let out roars that were unwilling to be outdone, and without any hesitation, they also charged forward. On one side, there was a neat and orderly legion of fierce bull monsters that seemed to be commanded by something. On the other side, there was no formation to speak of. They were just charging forward casually, but they were also fierce bull monsters with thick stone weapons in their hands. The two monster legions charged at each other and then collided fiercely. If there was anything to describe the following battle, there was only one sentence. It was a one-sided battle. It was truly a one-sided battle. Moreover, the one who fell was the one holding the stone weapon. Swish! Only to see the fierce bull monsters facing their opponents one by one, fiercely brandishing the thick and heavy stone weapons in their hands, carrying a fierce whistling sound, fiercely smashing the weapons towards the fierce bull monsters who had no weapons. Buzz! However, at this moment, the bodies of the fierce bull monsters that were attacked by the heavy stone weapons shone with a brilliant white light. When the thick and heavy stone weapon was swung towards the opponent's body, it was immediately enveloped by a brilliant white light. Suddenly, the stone weapons trembled, and as if they were neatly cut into cubes, white lines spread out on their surfaces. Bang! Following the spreading white lines, the thick and heavy stone weapons were blasted apart and turned into fragments. Woo 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 woo. Immediately, the fierce bull monsters shrouded in brilliant white light fiercely pounced on the fierce bull monsters that had lost their weapons and had no time to react. The sharp horns directly pierced into the bodies of the fierce bull monsters. The battle between the two monster legions formed by the fierce bull monsters was surprisingly similar no matter which corner it was in. The fierce bull monsters that were born from the underground city with stone weapons in their hands were the first to attack. Unfortunately, they were either shattered by the weapons they wielded against the bull monsters that were shrouded in dazzling white light, pierced through their bodies by the sharp horns of their opponents, or torn into pieces by the sharp fangs of their opponents. There was no suspense at all. Or they were shrouded in the brilliant white light together with their weapons. White lines spread out on the surface of their bodies, evenly dividing them into cubes. Then along those white lines, they exploded extremely neatly, dying without a complete corpse. Under such circumstances, in less than a minute, the fierce bull monsters with stone weapons in their hands all disappeared from the entire battlefield. All that was left were the ferocious bull monsters shrouded in brilliant white light. Woo 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 woo. As if celebrating their victory, the fierce bull monsters shrouded in brilliant white light let out spirited roars. Wang! As if retreating after accomplishing their mission, the fierce bull monsters began to slowly turn into light particles and dissipate in the air. Seeing this, Noah gradually retracted the astonishing magic surging wildly in his body and smiled. Using pure magic to arbitrarily create all kinds of tamed beasts and then control the tamed beasts. This was the true ability of Noah's beast horde incarnation. In the past, because of the relationship between Bio and Draeger, the incarnation's ability was limited from create tamed beasts to summon tamed beasts. Now, after Gaia and Aleia removed the consciousness of Bio and Draeger from Noah's soul, the beast horde incarnation finally displayed its true ability. Using magic to construct the tamed beast's body, creating tamed beasts with all kinds of shapes and sizes. No matter what kind of tamed beast it created, it would have the ability to crush everything. And no matter what kind of tamed beast it created, the fewer there were, the stronger it would be. If there was only one tamed beast, then its strength would definitely be comparable to Bio and Draeger. If he chose to create multiple tamed beasts, then according to the number of tamed beasts, the power would be evenly distributed. Using the beast horde incarnation, the choice of quality or quantity was all up to Noah. It could be said that this incarnation had a very high degree of freedom. It was not like before where it was limited to Bio and Draeger. Then it's time to go back. Looking at the empty white palace, Noah estimated the time and threw the sacred sword in his hand into the golden ripples beside him. After that, he moved in the direction of the tunnel leading to the 36th floor. After careful calculation, Noah had not returned home for nearly half a month. That was because it would take at least 1 or 2 days just to travel to the 37th floor. Therefore, the higher the level of the adventurer, the longer the time they had to stay in the dungeon. Therefore, in the first half of the month after he came to this world, Noah had been wandering around the upper and middle floors. It was not until half a month ago that he told Hastia that he wanted to go to the lower and middle floors. He had stayed in the dungeon for half a month. After half a month, Noah felt that it was time for him to go back. Otherwise, who knew what would happen to the goddess who hid at home all day? I left enough money for Hastia. At least she won't starve to death, right? After spending a day, Noah returned to the 18th floor from the 37th floor. Then he rested for another day on the 18th floor. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, he finally left the dungeon and entered the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel was a facility of the guild. Here, there was a shower for the adventurers, who had worked hard in the dungeon for a long time and were covered in dust and sweat, to change their clothes and bathe. After taking a refreshing bath, Noah came out of the shower and left the Tower of Babel without stopping. He walked in the direction of his home. Besides, I haven't updated my ability points for half a month. I wonder how much my ability points have improved? In the past, Hastia would help Noah to update his ability points almost every day. At that time, Noah's growth in one day was already very amazing. Now, after half a month, Noah, who had been training in the lower and middle floors and earning more experience points, had no reason not to have amazing growth. Noah was very much looking forward to it. However, when Noah arrived at a spot not far from his home, the scene that appeared in front of him caused him to be somewhat stunned. That was because a person was walking to the door of Noah and Hastia's house. He did not even knock on the door. Instead, he took out a key, opened the door, and walked in directly. Seeing this, Noah blinked his eyes. What's going on? Chapter 861. Noah. When Noah walked into the house, Hestia threw herself at Noah, hugged his waist, and buried her face in Noah's belly. She kept rubbing against him with tears in her eyes. You're finally back. If you don't come back, I'll be worried to death. Didn't I tell you that I'll go to the lower floors and won't be back for a while? Noah, who was hugged by Hestia, could only hug her back with a bitter smile on his face. Also, I've told you before, don't hug me for no reason. When are you going to change this habit of yours? This is not a habit. I won't do this to others. Hestia lifted her lovely face from Noah's arms and puffed up her cheeks. This intimate contact is only limited to you, my first family member and the closest person to me. I won't do this to anyone else except you. In the heavenly realm, Hestia was one of the 3 goddesses known as the Virgin Goddess. Although Hestia's petite and cute appearance and her rather unrestrained intimate behavior towards Noah did not make people think that she would hug him at any time. As a matter of fact, hugging a man of the opposite sex like this would only do that to Noah, who didn't care about her poverty and wealth, kindly took her in, and even joined her clan. As a matter of fact, Noah had never seen Hestia being so intimate with anyone before. At that moment, Noah could only continue to smile bitterly, but his eyes were fixed on the living room. Over there, the person who had just opened the door with the key and walked into the house was like a little police officer facing an instructor. His back was straight, his hands were pressed against his thighs, and his face was full of nervousness and sweat as he spoke. Hello. His voice was slightly out of tune. It could be seen that the person was indeed quite nervous. It was a boy who looked to be about 14 or 15 years old. He was wearing the armor of a novice adventurer and had a short knife at his waist. He had white hair and red eyes, which made people think of a rabbit. The boy not only stood very straight as if he was saluting, but he also suddenly bent down and bowed to Noah. As he did so, he introduced himself in a nervous tone. I'm Bel Crone. He was an adventurer who had only recently joined Hestia's clan. Please advise me. An adventurer who joined Hestia's family? Noah looked at Hestia with some surprise. In other words, he's a new member of your family? Hestia let go of Noah's waist and raised her head with a proud look on her face. That's right, Bel is a new member of the clan tribe that I recently accepted. I met this child by chance on the street, and because he was looking for a clan tribe that he could join, I invited him. I see. Noah understood. So that's why he has the key to this house? Yes. Hestia was like a small adult. She seemed to want to pat Noah's shoulder, but because of her height, in the end, she could only pat Noah's waist. You are the leader of Hestia's family. You have to take care of the newcomer. Leader? Noah was speechless. Generally speaking, in a family other than the main god, there would be a leader who was responsible for the entire family's affairs, and even managing the entire family's members and leading the family's activities. Finn was the leader of Loki's family. And the leader of Hestia's family, other than Noah who joined the family from the beginning, who else could it be? However, unlike Loki's family, Hestia's family currently only had 2 members, Noah and Bel. So, this so-called leader was really in name only. Of course, this was Noah's idea. Bel, on the other hand, bowed to Noah with an imposing manner. Please advise me, leader. All right. Noah scratched his cheek and stretched out his hand to Bel. Since we are both members of the same family, I hope we can get along well. Yes. Bel finally reacted. He hurriedly stretched out his 2 hands and respectfully shook Noah's hand with a grateful expression. I will work hard. Noah was a little uncomfortable being treated with such a grateful attitude by Bel. He could only turn his head and look in Hestia's direction. Hestia deliberately lowered her voice and whispered into Noah's ear. Before this child joined our family, he had visited many of the families in Eulalia. However, because this child came from outside the city and was just a child in the countryside before, those family clans with some power looked down on him. Therefore, he seems to be very afraid that you will object to him staying here. Is that so? Noah sighed and looked at Bel. Don't worry, I won't look down on a person because of his background or identity. As long as you have a good character, I won't object to you staying here. Really? Bel's nervous face was suddenly filled with joy, and he made a solemn vow. I will never do anything bad. Leader. That's good. Noah smiled bitterly. There is just 1 room left in the house. You should have moved in already, right? There were a total of 3 rooms in the house, facing the main hall. Noah's room was in the middle. Hestia's room was on the left. The room on the right was empty. Since Bel had the key to the house, he should have moved into the empty room already. Yes. Bel was so nervous that he began to sweat. If it's inconvenient, I can sleep on the sofa in the main hall. It's not a problem. I didn't say that. Noah's mouth twitched. Well, anyway, Bel has been an adventurer for a shorter time than you. Noah, as the leader, you should teach him how to fight in the dungeon and earn money. Hestia clapped her hands. Let's end our first meeting here. It's rare that all the family members are here, so let's have a small party as a welcome party for Bel. Bel was flattered. No need, great goddess, how can you spend money for me? Well, don't be so polite, Bel. Hestia waved her hand and said generously, don't look at us like that. We're actually very rich. The corner of Noah's eyes twitched fiercely when he heard that. Could it be that this Lolita goddess was treating all of his personal property as the public property of the clan tribe? That's why, Bel, go out now and buy all the good stuff you can find, Hestia said as she handed a purse full of gold coins to Bel. It's okay to spend all of it. Looking at the money pouch, the corners of Noah's eyes twitched. He was speechless. That pouch seemed to be the allowance that Noah had given to Hestia half a month ago when he was preparing to go to the dungeon. Because of Noah's return, Hestia generously took out the rest of her living expenses. That must be it, right? However, the simple-minded Bel seemed to believe Hestia's nonsense. He took the purse full of gold coins with a look of admiration and immediately walked out of the house and went to the street. After Bel left the house, Hestia's little adult appearance immediately disappeared. Instead, she said to Noah with a playful smile on her face, "Before that child comes back, do you want to upgrade your ability value?" Noah rolled his eyes in annoyance, but he still nodded helplessly. After all, Noah was very concerned about his growth in the past half a month. In the living room, Noah sat on the sofa with his arms bared. His back was exposed to Hestia, who was sitting behind him. Hestia dripped a drop of divine blood on Noah's back and began to upgrade her ability value. Perhaps because there was a second member, Hestia did not casually pull people into her room and make them lie on the bed to upgrade their ability value. Instead, she did it in the living room. A faint blue light constantly fluctuated on Noah's back. Mysterious words moved back and forth. Hestia stared at the words. Clearly, she was very concerned about Noah's current progress. After a while, Hestia's eyes shone with a strange light. Chapter 862. The blue light on Noah's back slowly dimmed until it completely disappeared. Thus, the ability value update ended. Noah immediately turned his head and looked at Hestia. Hestia smiled at Noah's gaze and handed the ability value status that was translated into the common language by the sacred text to Noah. Noah silently took it and looked at it. Noah Dori LV. 1 power, SSS, 1441, SSS, 2000, durability, SSS, 1472, SSS, 2000, dexterity, SSS, 1468, SSS, 2000, agility, SSS, 1477, SSS, 2000, magic power, SSS, 1453, SSS, 2000, magic skill, protection from the world, permanent skill. It was equivalent to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. Half a month ago, before Noah went to the lower and deeper levels of the dungeon, his ability value had broken through the upper limit of the SS stage and reached the SSS stage. Originally, the SS stage was a stage that had never appeared before, let alone the SSS stage. Therefore, Hestia had a headache about this kind of ability value. Noah had an even bigger headache. Because even after reaching the SSS stage, Noah still couldn't meet the requirements to level up. Without any other choice, Noah decided to go to the lower and deeper levels of the dungeon and train for a period of time. Now, after half a month, Noah was still at the SSS stage of his all-around strength. However, the proficiency of each basic ability was still at 2000, not even a little bit more. It was as if the proficiency couldn't be increased anymore and finally reached a certain requirement and didn't need to continue to increase. Noah's eyes lit up. He quickly turned his head and looked at Hestia. Facing Noah, Hestia revealed a holy smile that was very consistent with the name of a goddess. "Congratulations, Noah." Hearing this, how could Noah not understand what the result was? The SSS stage of the SSS stage, and the proficiency of each basic ability has reached 2000. This foundation stone has finally filled you, the vessel, and allowed you to evolve to the next stage. Hestia didn't disappoint Noah's expectations. She told him the news that Noah had been waiting for about a month. "Now you can level up." Everyone suddenly became silent. Phew! Noah let out a sigh of relief. He felt that the extreme training for the past month had not been in vain. "I was worried. What if I couldn't meet the requirements?" "I'm not worried." Hestia shook her head with a smile. "Whether it's potential, talent, possibility, or real strength, you have subverted my understanding again and again. If even you can't level up, then I really don't believe that any child in this world can level up." Hearing Hestia's great evaluation of himself, Noah just smiled and looked at the level column of the ability value recorded on the record paper in his hand. At this time, Noah's level was still at LV1. This was because Hestia had not yet extracted the EXP needed to level Noah up to LV2. You still need to decide on the development ability, right? Development ability. It was an ability that could only be learned when leveling up. This ability was different in nature from the basic ability. It could further develop and strengthen special or professional abilities. For example, most blacksmiths could obtain the development ability called forging, which made the quality of the equipment they made better and even added some functions and effects. Another example was that most of the pharmacists who could concoct various elixirs could obtain the development ability called reconciliation, which made the effects of the elixirs they concocted better, and they could concoct a variety of recovery medicines with magical effects. Therefore, what kind of development ability could be learned depended on what kind of actions the person who received the favor had taken and what kind of experience points they had accumulated. Noah was neither a blacksmith nor a pharmacist. Naturally, it was impossible for him to obtain the two development abilities of training and reconciliation. If he didn't get any experience points worth mentioning, then even if he leveled up, he might not be able to learn the development ability. On the contrary, as long as he got the appropriate experience points, it was possible to have multiple development abilities. But when leveling up, he could only get one development ability. Hestia didn't directly help Noah level up, probably because of the development ability. For example, there were multiple development abilities for Noah to choose from. It seems that you've already guessed it. Then I'll get straight to the point. Hestia didn't beat around the bush and directly said to Noah, "Currently, there are 3 development abilities for you to choose from." 3? Noah curiously asked. Which 3? The first one is the Hunter ability, which is used to deal with monsters. It's a type of ability that can only be obtained by defeating a large number of monsters in a short period of time. It's quite difficult to obtain. Hestia said. This ability can strengthen the ability of the user when they encounter monsters of the same type that they have fought and gained experience points from. It's very suitable for raiding dungeons. It's a very valuable ability. As long as the adventurer's goal is to raid dungeons, they would want to obtain this ability the most. The second one is the Magician ability, which is used for magic. Only those who are good at magic and have a good grasp of magic can learn this ability. Hestia looked at Noah with a strange expression. This ability can strengthen the power of magic, expand the area of effect, increase the efficiency of mental strength, magic power, and so on. Only with this ability can one be called a high-level magus. Those who haven't learned magic and those who use magic half-heartedly have no way of obtaining this development ability as a choice for leveling up. Hearing this, Noah immediately laughed. Hestia looked at Noah with a strange expression. Undoubtedly, Noah's 3 magic options were still empty. How could he obtain the Magician ability as a choice? But Noah did have a good grasp of magic, and his mastery of it was very high. Although it was just Enhance and Magic Cannon, which were relatively basic magic in the world of Type Moon. Noah, who didn't mention this matter, could only change the topic. Then what about the last one? The last one is called Mystery. Hestia's expression became serious. To be honest, I really didn't think that you could obtain this ability, Noah, but I suggest you choose this one. Why? Noah asked curiously. Is this ability special? Of course it's special, Hestia said. In the whole of Eulalia, there are less than 5 people who have this ability. Don't you think it's special? Less than 5 people? Noah's curiosity was piqued. What kind of effect does this ability have? To put it simply, this development ability is like a miracle that we gods are best at, right? Hestia said. If the person who obtains this ability is a blacksmith, then he or she may be able to create weapons that are more precious than magic swords. If the person who obtains this ability is an apothecary, then he or she may be able to create elixirs that can bring people back from the dead. A long time ago, there was even a person with this ability who created a legendary item that could make people immortal. In the eyes of us gods, this ability is already related to the domain of gods. Noah raised an eyebrow. If this was really the case, then this ability was indeed very special. People with this ability will even attract the attention of the gods. If the news of you having this ability spreads out, I don't think there will be a single god who won't try to steal you from me, right? Has T tried to persuade him? So, if you don't choose this ability, then it's really a waste. Just choose this one. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.